Chapter 666. Although Zhang Yan's moves were all ordinary methods and were mostly meant to probe, he was also continuously pressing forward, not even giving his opponent a chance to take a breather. Visit download. Xiao Zhongxiang looked at the incoming sword light and knew that it was too late to dodge. He twisted his body and his whole body was like a reflection in the water, twisting and distorting. In a breath's time, he disappeared from his original position. The male and female swords from before actually combined into one and turned into a dazzling magic sword. After continuously clashing with the flying sword light for a few times, suddenly there was a sword-like hum and he crashed out of the circle. In a flash, he was a few miles away. The sword light turned and his body appeared again. Then he suddenly shouted, his body turned into a stream of light, riding on the black and white sword light to attack. Zhang Yan saw that he had a strange dodging technique, not to mention the method to deal with it. He was also like Daoren. He immediately guessed that he was an expert in this field and might have a lot of hidden killer moves. No wonder he was so confident earlier. However, he had a lot of tricks up his sleeves. Since he had used the trapping technique, he did not want to be entangled here. With a wave of his hand, a purple thunderbolt flew over. Xiao Zhongxiang did not dare to be struck by it. He quickly deflected the sword light and dodged to the side. The way of fighting was not to bring out one's strength to the extreme and at the same time to suppress the opponent. He was good at flying and escaping in the air, using a strange method to win. Facing the opponent head-on was not his original strength. If he was hit by that thunderbolt, even if he did not die, he would be half crippled. At this time, he saw a barely discernible water droplet flying over. He had no choice but to use the sword to escape. In just a few breaths, there was a flash of light behind him. Just now, that sword light had caught up again. The muscles on his face could not help but twitch, he felt a little depressed. From the beginning of the fight, he was suppressed. He originally wanted to fight back after a few rounds, but Zhang Yan's magical powers were like a deep pool, always bottomless. When he got a little closer, he was always forced out, unable to find a suitable opportunity to attack. Originally, it wasn't that he hadn't encountered an opponent with such swift and fierce attacks. Usually, he would fly far away and look for an opportunity in the outer circle. But just now, he'd witnessed Zhang Yan's violet cloud divine lightning, and its great might caused him to be extremely fearful. He was extremely afraid that Zhang Yan would be able to calmly execute it without restraint, so he didn't dare to fly too far away. However, this situation had to be changed. Although it looked like he was only dodging and did not consume much mana, the opponent had endless methods. Under the heavy pressure, it was hard to guarantee that he would not make mistakes. In a fight between two Yuanying, a slight carelessness could lead to death. When he thought up to here, he roused his spirits and abruptly stopped moving. He stopped dodging and circulated the male and female swords to repel the few sword lights that assaulted him, and with a shake of his shoulder, a white and moist jade ladle that was dazzling with a precious light hung down from the high cloud to hold the Netherism heavy water. But when he was struck by the heavy water, he seemed to feel it as well, causing his body to tremble violently. He forcefully suppressed the surging vital energy in his chest and seized this rare opportunity to withdraw a talisman paper from his sleeve before stuffing it into his mouth, and then swiftly chewing it a few times before puffing his cheeks and blowing, causing a 3-inch phoenix beak needle that was suffused with a dim light to fly out towards Zhang Yan. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he hurriedly made a hand sign, the two swords instantly merged into one, then his body twisted, disappearing into thin air. The sword light rushed up, moving inwards, thinking that as long as it was within 300 feet, he could attack with the sword, no longer being forced to fight back like before. When Zhang Yan saw that the flying needle was in front of him, he suddenly waved his sleeve, a surging wave of mana passed by, sweeping it away. Xiao Zhongxiang came with the help of the sword. How fast was he? In this short moment of opportunity, he broke in. His heart was delighted, he was about to use the sword to kill, but at this moment, he suddenly heard a rumbling sound, a curtain of water appeared in front of him, like a ferocious mountain torrent, the boundless tide of water rushed towards him, he shouted, had no choice but to hide inside the magic sword again, once again being forced out of the inner circle. After coming out, he looked at the surging and boundless light of water from afar, his face pale. He said hatefully, "If I had the 100 shadow sword, how would I be blocked here? I would have already killed my way in." Although his escape into the magic sword technique was miraculous, but it only lasted for 3 to 4 breaths, every time he used up a lot of mana. If it was the 100 shadow sword from the sect, it would be enough for more than 10 breaths. No matter if it was far away or attacking the enemy, it would be very easy. Suddenly, there was movement behind him, and the sword light from before was chasing after him again. He had no choice but to dodge, and he couldn't help but feel exhausted from running for his life. He thought to himself, "This person is standing still. He must be affected by the astral wind and can't fly freely. I might as well use that method to defeat him." He took out a handful of colorful stones from his sleeve. Each of them was shaped like a broad bean. He crushed them in his palm and opened them again. The stone shell had already shattered, revealing a dozen or so little bugs, all the size of a grain of rice, curled up into a ball. After seeing the sun, they began to wriggle. A moment later, their bodies swelled up and stretched out. They were the size of a baby's fist, their bodies like a whip, fat and thick, scaly hair like brushes. Below their abdomens were more than 100 short tentacles, and on their backs were a pair of transparent wings. This was the armor bug, a rare and strange bug in the world. It lived when exposed to the light and died when exposed to the night. It loved to eat the essence of cultivators, and the protective treasured light was useless in front of this bug. It was not afraid of divine weapons, and once it burrowed into the body, it would suck the marrow and brain, turning the person into an empty shell. Since ancient times, there were many poisonous bugs and silver in the South Cliffs continent. He found this bug during his travels, and after being cursed, it could listen to his orders to kill his opponent. He didn't hope for this bug to defeat Zhang Yan, but to go up and restrain him, then he could use his skills. The dozen or so white bugs flapped their membranous wings, and without waiting for his orders, they took the initiative to fly towards Zhang Yan. Zhang Yan's eyes flashed. He had met quite a few cultivators in the Dongxing continent, but he had never met a truly brilliant cultivator. However, the methods that Xiao Zhongxiang was using right now, and all sorts of Dao techniques and divine abilities, he seemed to have a way to deal with them. This was not something that a cultivator who was limited to one place could have, and he must have met quite a few experts. He raised his hand and pressed forward, and the true light of water behind him stirred up a huge wave. The armor bugs sensed danger, and dispersed with a whoosh. They were as fast as a white thread, avoiding the water screen, and scuttled inside. A dozen or so sword gleams flew out at this moment, and each of them accurately slashed the back of the bug, slicing it into two. However, in the blink of an eye, the two halves of the body grew a head and a tail, and the number almost doubled. Even if a few of them had their membranous wings cut off, they just shook their bodies and shook off their necrotic wings, and instantly, a pair of wings grew back. When Zhang Yan saw this, he wasn't surprised. His eyes flashed, and he thought to himself, it really is the armor bugs. It's rumored that as long as the sun doesn't set, it can't be killed, and the more it is killed, the more it grows. This kind of strange bug was born from the fierce yang qi, and would automatically die at night. However, he didn't care about it now. Not to mention fighting with Xiao Zhongxiang, even if the flying sword escaped, this bug would still turn around to look for others. It wouldn't take long for it to become so overwhelming that it couldn't be restrained. Not only would it affect the cultivators here, it would also implicate the people here. He gave a shout, and a blazing flame flew out from the high clouds above, flashing across the sky. The armor bugs were burnt by this flame, and turned into a wisp of smoke. However, after a moment, the smoke gathered and returned to normal in the blink of an eye. When Zhang Yan saw that even this couldn't stop this thing, he couldn't help but raise his brows slightly, and he thought to himself, this fierce yang bug needs something poisonous to be able to restrain it. While he was thinking, Xiao Zhongxiang had already caught his breath, and instantly rushed into the inner circle. He took out his swords and twisted them towards the enemy's neck. Halfway through, a sword light took the initiative to greet him, and pushed his swords to the side. However, he wasn't shocked, and instead, he was delighted. Previously, he couldn't even retaliate, but now he could do it freely. It was obvious that the armor bugs were effective, and attracted most of the enemy's attention. As long as he increased his sword momentum and attacked with all his strength, he might be able to find a good opportunity to behead the enemy. At this moment, Zhang Yan seemed to have thought of something, and he suddenly smiled. "I got it." He first glanced at where Xiao Zhongxiang was, and then he split out 36 sword lights to slash at him. This series of storm-like attacks caused Xiao Zhongxiang to be drenched in sweat, and he hurriedly escaped into the sword and dodged the attacks. After forcing them away, Zhang Yan flicked his sleeve, causing a gust of strong wind to blow the swarm of beetles away. After that, he calmly took out a jade bottle, unplugged it, and shook it. A strand of white smoke sprayed out from within, and then a round beetle that was shaped like a shuttle flew out. However, its body was covered in a bloody glow, and it emitted a fishy smell. He originally wanted to order this bloodline gold bug to deal with the armor bugs, but this bug stuck to his side and refused to leave. He pondered for a moment, and said with a smile, "I didn't expect you to be greedy for this thing." "Fine, even a mortal emperor doesn't need hungry soldiers. Today, I'll fulfill your wish." He circulated a mouthful of Junyang energy from his abdomen, opened his mouth, and sprayed a stream of clear energy on the blood worm's body. After receiving the energy, the worm let out a buzzing sound, and its body swelled up. The blood color on its body became as thick as a paste. Suddenly, it let out a shrill cry, and one after another, more blood worms flew out of the jade bottle. After a few breaths of time, a large blood cloud appeared. At a glance, there were probably no less than tens of thousands of them. Under the lead of the insect, they charged towards the black beetle. In almost an instant, the insect tide had drowned the 20-odd white insects. However, many of them hadn't eaten their fill, and when they saw that there was nothing left to fill their stomachs, they turned to stare at Xiao Zhongxiang. Xiao Zhongxiang's face turned pale. Although he didn't know this bug, it could be seen that it was more vicious than the armor bugs. He panicked, and quickly escaped on his sword. Zhang Yan sensed the place for a while, and when he saw that the armor bugs had been taken care of, and there was no lingering poison left, he nodded, and soared into the sword light, chasing in the direction that the armor bugs escaped. At this moment, Xiao Zhongxiang's forehead was already covered in sweat. After hiding for a while, the mana in his body was greatly consumed, but he still couldn't shake off the swarm of bugs behind him. No matter where he flew to, they always chased after him. He gritted his teeth. At this moment, his life was more important, and he didn't care about hiding anymore. With a leap, he went into the female sword. Then, the male sword gave off a strong sword light, and with a turn, a swoosh, a large number of bug corpses fell. The golden bugs behind him were endless, and it was far from what he could clean up in a few moves. However, with this obstruction, the Yin sword could escape, and in a flash, it actually disappeared without a trace. But just at this moment, a sword light leaped over, and slashed in the void, giving out a clanging sound. The female sword reappeared, and Xiao Zhongxiang was knocked out from his hiding place in a sorry state. After using this last hiding technique, his mana was exhausted, and he could only watch in despair as the bloodline gold bugs pounced on him, and then swarmed up, completely swallowing his body. Chapter 667. The cultivators from the various sects had been waiting on the tidal top cliff for a while now. It was already noon and the sun was nearing the middle of the sky. The sky was blue and the sea was blue. White clouds floated leisurely and the waves of the sea were flowing with golden light. Suddenly, a sound resounded in the sky and the clouds parted. Chu Mu Rant's body trembled and he said excitedly, "It's Senior Martial Brothers Sect Master. Senior Martial Brothers Sect Master has returned." The disciples of Deep Abyss School were all excited. How could the cultivators from the various sects not know that Zhang Yan won the battle? They all rushed to the cliff and congratulated him. The two Longxiang disciples and the Taoist boy were a little anxious when they didn't see Xiao Zhongxiang. The traveling light descended from the clouds and landed in front of the cliff before slowly dispersing. Zhang Yan slowly walked out from within and raised his hand to pass a letter to Chu Muran. He said, "Junior Marshal brother, I found this on Xiao Zhongxiang. Take it and pass it to everyone." Chu Muran quickly took it and skimmed through it. He immediately knew what was going on and used his mana to protect the letter. He sent it into the air and pointed at it. "Everyone, please take a look." Everyone took a look and realized that it was a letter between Xiao Zhongxiang and the Python tribe. There was even a seal at the bottom. They were all smart people and knew that this was purposely left behind to prevent the Python tribe from burning the bridge after crossing the river. Now, this was proof that he was colluding with the Python tribe. Someone was infuriated and shouted, "Please give the order to destroy Long Xiang." As soon as these words were spoken, it immediately attracted the agreement of many people, and the surrounding area was filled with condemnation. There were also many people who looked at the two Longxiang sect disciples with unfriendly gazes. The two of them were scared out of their wits. They pulled the Taoist boy and ran to Han Wanka. As if grasping at straws, they knelt down and kowtowed, begging, "Taoist Han, please save our lives." Han Wanka frowned and released a ray of spiritual light. He encircled the three of them and said, "Although your sect leader and I are only at the beginning, since the three of you came with me, I will protect you for the time being. But if Master Zhang insists on punishing you, I won't be able to stop you." Even though the surrounding cultivators were filled with hostility towards him, he was a Yuanian cultivator after all, so no one dared to approach him. Zhang Yan raised his voice, "Fellow Taoists, Longxiang sect has colluded with the demon python. Xiao Zhongxiang has already been executed, but his disciples only obeyed their master's orders. Their crimes are not worthy of death. Just expel them from the domain of the divine house. There's no need to make things too difficult for them." He turned to look at Wen Liang. "Junior brother Wen, I'll leave this matter to you." Wen Liang acknowledged the order in a loud voice, "Little brother will go now." Han Wanka nodded, waving his hand at the two Longxiang disciples. "You heard it, leave quickly." The two of them felt as if they had been pardoned from a great crime. Because the cultivators sent here were still looking for trouble with them, they didn't dare to stay for long. Dragging the Taoist child with him, he boarded a flying boat and fled the place in a panic. With Xiao Zhongxiang dead, the third round was absolutely necessary. Han Wanka walked up to Zhang Yan. He transmitted his voice, "Junior brother Zhang, I will also take my leave." Zhang Yan thought for a while, then took out a talisman from his sleeve and handed it over. "This is a letter from my sect. If senior brother has any problems in the future, you can come find me at the Han Yuan sect." Han Wanka was silent for a while. He took it down, hesitated for a while, then said, "Junior brother Zhang, the Python tribe has long wanted to take over Eastern Victory. This time they didn't succeed, but they won't give up just like that. You have to be careful." Zhang Yan smiled and bowed. "Thank you for the reminder, senior brother." Han Wanka returned the gesture, then rode the wind and disappeared into the blue sky. Zhang Yan watched him leave. Even though this person was an abandoned disciple of the sect, and it wasn't convenient for him to get too close to him, but he seemed to have some status in the Python tribe, so there was no need to be too hostile towards him. In the future, there will be opportunities to interact with him. Now that the flood had receded, the sect still needed to go back and rebuild their mountain gates. Since the battle was over, they all came up to bid farewell. An hour later, Zhang Yan also returned to the cave dwelling. He carefully looked at the 3 spiritual herbs he got from Xiao Zhongxiang, and found that if they were refined into white moon heroic fruits, they could be used for 4 to 5 years. As for the remaining gap, he could only go to Chu to look for opportunities. There were still a few years until the gathering of the dragon pillars, so he could focus on cultivating the 5 elements escape technique. Once he mastered this technique, he would be able to lock down the world like a 3rd-layer nascent soul cultivator. At that time, he would be able to head to this place. Fire Hole Mountain. Tsing Tsongluan had eyes and ears in the Shinwu Mountain, and the news of the battle between Zhang Yan and Xiao Zhongxiang spread to him in just 2 to 3 days. Although Xiao Zhongxiang had left Dongshan continent for hundreds of years, he was after all a disciple of Fengxiang sword school, and even entered Dao with a demonic body. The Yuanying cultivators present had all heard of his reputation, and the fact that Zhang Yan was able to defeat this person caused a lot of surprise. On this day, everyone was discussing Dao, and when this matter was brought up, someone said, Xiao Zhongxiang is a demonic body cultivator, and was expelled by sect master Chen. I heard that he had long escaped to another continent, but who would have thought that he was hiding in the Shenwu mountain? Sing Tsongluan looked at an old man at the table, and asked with a smile, how is this person compared to Elder Xian? Elder Xian laughed, and said, Xiao Zhongxiang used to wield one of the 6 famous swords of Fengxiang sword school, the 100 Shadow Sword, but I think he has some ability. If he had this sword, I would definitely not be his opponent, but later I heard that this sword was taken away by sect master Chen, and his cultivation is only about 60% of his original strength. I am confident that I can still fight him. Sing Tsongluan nodded, and said, that Daoist Zhang was able to defeat him, so he must be quite capable. At this moment, someone shouted, what's the point of saying all this? There are more than 100 Daoists here, are we supposed to be afraid of that Daoist Zhang? Sing Tsongluan smiled, and said, you're right. Among the people invited by Daoist Nun Wei, there were more than a dozen Yuanying cultivators, and in Dongshan continent, they could already be considered as quite a force. Elder Xian looked at Daoist Nun Wei, who was sitting at the side without saying a word, and said, Daoist Wei, we have been staying here for many days, eating and drinking for free every day. If we continue to stay, I'm afraid we will become unwelcome guests. Sing Tsongluan quickly said, what is Elder Xian saying? These days, I have been discussing Dao with everyone, and I have really benefited a lot. Daoist Nun Wei said, alright, since the flood has receded, we won't have to say that our Shaotsang state people are taking advantage of others. On the second day, more than 100 people in Fire Hole Mountain flew on their own flying lights, heading towards Tsangzhu Peak. At this moment, there were 2 people standing on the heavens, and they saw this scene. One of them was Song Chuyuan, who had been away for a year, and the other was a lame Taoist, but he had an elegant appearance, and there was a spirit hidden in his eyes. Song Chuyuan thought to himself, looking at the direction of this group of people, they are indeed heading towards Shenwu Mountain. If I go back and report this to Sect Master Zhang, he might let me live in the future. When he signed the spell contract, it was only limited to 16 years, and he really didn't know how Zhang Yan would deal with him once the agreed time was up, so he could only think of a way to prove his usefulness. A few days ago, he returned from South Vast Sea Realm, and he came here to visit a good friend, wanting to convince him to return to Hanyuan's sect with him, but he didn't expect to accidentally hear Daoist Nun Wei inviting fellow Daoists. She wanted to go to Hanyuan's sect to pick a fight. Therefore, he stayed behind to gather information. At this moment, the lame Daoist said, Daoist Song, since I want to rely on Sect Master Zhang, why don't I help him resolve this crisis? Song Chuyuan couldn't help but turn pale, and he said, Daoist Tang, there are more than 10 Yuanying cultivators there. How can we stop them? The lame Daoist smiled mysteriously, and he said, there's no need to stop them directly. Daoist can just watch my ability, and follow me. He turned around and flew away using the astral winds. Song Chuyuan hesitated for a moment, and he followed. The 2 of them cultivated above the heavens. They were naturally much faster than Daoist Nun Wei's group, and 2 hours later, they landed in a valley with luxuriant weeds. The lame Daoist took out a bamboo pole, and he looked at the ground twice. A coffin popped out from the ground, and he opened the coffin lid. He saw an old cultivator lying inside, and his breathing was slightly uneven. He went up and bowed, and he said, Daoist. It's all because of your body. After saying that, he took out a talisman paper and stuck it on the Daoist's forehead, and he took out a banner from his sleeve. There was a red ribbon tied around the pole, and there was a copper ring hanging below it. It was obvious that there was a soul coiled around the banner, and it was exactly the same as the old Daoists. He made a spell, and the banner waved, and the talisman paper instantly sank into the center of the old Daoist's forehead. He suddenly opened his eyes and sat up. His gaze was originally a little confused, but after a while, it became clearer. The lame Taoist hurriedly made a spell. The old Taoist couldn't help but reveal a struggling expression, but after a while, he gradually returned to a blank expression. Then, he tapped his feet, and he rode a astral wind, and flew into the sky. As Taoist Nunwei and the others were walking, a ray of light appeared in front of them. Then, a middle-aged Taoist who looked to be in his 40s appeared, and he blocked in front of them, and shouted, "All of you, stop right there." Tsing Tsongluan looked at the old Taoist's robe, and recognized it as the robe of an elder of Zhongtai sect. He was shocked, and he signaled to the people around him, and he went forward alone, and bowed, "Taoist, why are you blocking our way?" The old Taoist clasped his hands behind his back, and he said coldly, "I am Zhongtai Patrol Inspector Zhou Shao. Who are you all?" Tsing Tsongluan said, "I am a Qi practitioner from Fire Hole Mountain. Today, I and a fellow Taoist are passing through your esteemed land, and we are going to Shinwu Mountain to visit a friend." The old Taoist looked at him, and he said, "Do you all have a talisman?" Tsing Tsongluan was puzzled, and he asked, "What talisman?" The old Taoist said, "The sect master has decreed that if 2 Yuanying cultivators travel within the borders of Chu, they must have a travel talisman. If you don't have one, you are not allowed to pass through here." Tsing Tsongluan was stunned, and he said, "There is such a rule." Taoist Nunwei looked at him impatiently, and she went forward, and said, "I am a Shaozang state." The old Taoist interrupted her, and he said, "No matter who you are, I will not stop you if you have the talisman. If you don't have one, leave quickly." Taoist Nunwei didn't expect him to not give her any face, and she immediately frowned. Tsing Tsongluan saw that the situation was not good, and he said in a low voice, "This is Zhongtai sect after all, you must not be rash." Not only him, the other cultivators also came forward to persuade Taoist Nunwei, afraid that she would have a conflict with them. Zhongtai sect was after all one of the 5 major sects, and although they suffered a lot from fighting with Xianyu sect, they were still not someone they could afford to offend. Tsing Tsongluan said, "Since Zhongtai sect has such a rule, then we can only take a detour by sea." If it was just a Yuanying cultivator, he could go to the heavenly layer, but there were many disciples around him, so it was not feasible. Fortunately, Daran said, "It will only take 10 days to travel by sea, Taoist way. There is no need to become enemies with Zhongtai sect because of this." Someone was worried, and he said, "But there is the Python tribe on the North Sea, could it be?" Fortunately, Daran said, "Taoist friend, you are worrying too much. Although the Python tribe is entrenched in the North Sea, it is tens of thousands of miles away from the Shinwu Mountain. Moreover, the disaster of the tidal whirlpool has just passed. Even if Taoist Dong Tianjinhai Fubo is here, he won't have time to deal with us, so there is no need to worry." After the group finished their discussion, they turned west, and prepared to go around the sea to the Shinwu Mountain. Song Chuyuan watched them leave, but he was overjoyed, and he turned back, and said, "Taoist Tang, we really tricked them." The lame Taoist said, "This is only treating the symptoms, not the root cause, but we need to delay it for a few more days. We need to quickly report to Sect Master Zhang, and prepare early." Song Chuyuan nodded in agreement. Chapter 668. After Han Wanka left Shinwu Mountain, he didn't return to his residence in the sea. Instead, he went to other places to pick herbs. Half a month later, he returned to his cave. As soon as he stepped into the main hall, he saw a green-robed cultivator sitting there as if waiting for him. Seeing him enter, the cultivator stood up with a smile and cupped his hands. "Fellow Taoist Han, I've been waiting for you for a few days. I thought you wouldn't come back." At this moment, a gentle and beautiful maid came up to greet him. She looked a bit frightened. "Master, you've returned." Fellow Taoist Luo brought a lot of. Han Wanka seemed to have expected this. He waved his hand and smiled. "It's nothing. You can leave first." The gentle and beautiful woman saw that he didn't look nervous at all. She felt a bit relieved. She bowed and retreated out of the hall. Han Wanka went to the main seat and sat down. He said, "Fellow Taoist Luo is a busy man. I'm sure you have something important to tell me. The green-robed cultivator looked at him. After a while, he suddenly smiled. I heard that Xiao Zhongxiang and Zhang Daoist fought. Fellow Daoist Luo admitted defeat before the fight even started. What's the reason? Although his smile was kind, there was a hint of questioning in his words. Han Wanka's expression didn't change. He said, that's what I need to ask fellow. The green-robed cultivator made an "oh" sound and said sincerely, fellow Daoist, please tell me. If it's really my fault, I'll definitely apologize to fellow Daoist. Han Wanka turned his body slightly to the side and looked over, saying, although this poor Taoist is a guest of your clan, I have already said in advance that I will not make things difficult for the disciples of the Yinsang sect. Your clan leader has also agreed. The green-robed cultivator was slightly surprised. He said, this is the Dongxing continent. What? He paused as if he suddenly thought of something. His expression became serious. He said, you're saying that Zhang Daoist is a disciple of Qinsang. How can you be sure? Han Wanka slowly said, the sect of Hanyuan was established by senior brother Shen Baishuang. It can be considered as my Qinsang villa. That Taoist Zhang claims to be a disciple of Zhou Chengju. Isn't he a disciple of my Qinsang villa? When the azure-robed cultivator heard this, his expression suddenly changed. He stood up and shouted, Zhang Yan. Are you talking about Zhang Yan? Han Wanka didn't expect such a big reaction. He frowned and said, he didn't tell me his name, and I didn't ask. By then, the cyan-robed cultivator had also calmed down. He gritted his teeth and said, since he's Zhou Chengju's disciple, it must be him. Han Wanka was baffled, so what? The azure-robed cultivator sighed and sat down again. He said bitterly, fellow Daoist, you don't know. Back then, he wielded the Northern Dark Metropolis Heavenly Sword and broke the 4 emblems God-slaying formation, forcing my Python tribe to avoid the people on the sea. That was him. This time, it was Han Wanka's turn to reveal a shocked expression, involuntarily crying out, fellow Daoist is saying that he was injured. Speaking up to hear, he seemed to realize that he had misspoken and abruptly stopped himself. He didn't dare to continue. The azure-robed cultivator shook his head and said, it's not just that. 20 years ago, during the 16-sect sword duel, this person defeated the disciples of the various sects and killed more than 10 elders of the demonic sect. Even Feng Haiyang of the Netherspring sect, who had cultivated to the 3rd stage of Yuanying, was defeated by his sword. In terms of fighting abilities, he's the best among the 16 sections. Han Wanka was dumbfounded. Ever since he was chased out of the sect, he had been living in seclusion in the Eastern Sea. He didn't interact with his fellow Taoists, so he didn't know about these things. When he first saw Zhang Yan, he thought that he was just a rising star in the sect. He didn't expect him to be so talented. While he was shocked, he also felt an inexplicable sense of pride. At this moment, the azure-robed cultivator thought about many things and instantly felt uneasy. He stood up again and paced around the hall. Although Zhang Yan was only a Yuanying cultivator, his identity wasn't simple. He was one of the top 10 disciples of the Qinsang sect and the best among the 16 sects in sword duels. Why did he suddenly appear in the Dongxing continent? Could it be because of the Python tribe? Thinking about this, he couldn't stay any longer. No, I have to report this matter to the clan leader. Fellow Daoist Han, thank you for telling me. If not, I would still be in the dark. I'll take my leave now. He hurriedly cupped his hands and left. Han Wanka wanted to stand up to send him off, but he saw that the azure-robed cultivator had already turned into a ray of light and left. He couldn't help but shake his head and stroke his long beard. He sat in the chair in a daze, no one knew what he was thinking. Song Chuyuan and Song Chuyuan flew day and night. It only took them 2 days and 2 nights to rush back to Zhangzhou Peak. After entering the sect, the lame Taoist glanced around and was shocked. Along the way, he saw traces of the flood waves everywhere. However, the inside of the sect was covered in trees and trees. The pavilions were neat and tidy, the lake was wide and the mountains were tall. It was magnificent and majestic. This was because the sect's restrictive array had blocked the flood outside the sect. The security was so tight that it could even block the flood tribulation. Even if Wei Shuling had double the number of people, as long as they were prepared in advance, they wouldn't be afraid. Because the sect didn't have a token, Song Chuyuan didn't dare to break the rules. He had left the sect for a year and brought the lame Taoist here, so he could only slowly walk up the mountain. Luckily, Zhangzhou Peak was above the spirit vein of the divine house. There were many white springs and beautiful stones. The scenery was very beautiful and it wasn't boring. After walking for less than an hour, the two of them reached the peak of Zhangzhou Peak. The cliff here was steep, the pine and cypress trees were lush, and the grass was lush. There was a cave that was embedded into the mountain wall. On the two stone doors, there was a white jade board with the two words, Zhangzhou, written on it. In front of the cave was a stone platform that was about 4 to 5 acres wide. It was all paved with white jade bricks. A bell pavilion could be seen on the left side of the stone wall. Less than a few steps away, a waterfall poured down from the clouds, forming a clear pond near the cave. A few spirit carps with long whiskers swam back and forth in the pond. At this moment, there was a big-headed boy sitting on a rock. From time to time, he would throw bait into the water, causing the carps to fight for it. They jumped up and down, and from time to time, they would shine with a golden light. Song Chuyuan walked forward and said to the big-headed boy, "Please inform the sect master that Song Chuyuan has returned and is here to see you." The big-headed boy got down from the rock and said, "Taoist, please wait." When he finished, he went inside to pass the message. Song Chuyuan whispered, "This Taoist boy is a different cultivator and is trusted by spiritual master Zhang. Fellow Taoist, don't offend him." The lame Taoist nodded and thought to himself, from the looks of it, this spiritual master Zhang is really like what fellow Taoist Song said. He doesn't view different cultivators as dangerous beasts. Not long after, Jingyu came out and said, "Taoist Song, master is calling for you." Song Chuyuan turned around and said to the lame Taoist, "Fellow Taoist Tang, please wait here for a moment." The lame Taoist smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Song, please go ahead." Song Chuyuan tidied up his clothes and walked into the cave. The lame Taoist stood outside the cave alone. He looked around and admired the surrounding scenery. Although his talent wasn't bad, it was a pity that his body was incomplete, so the main sects weren't willing to accept him. He could only become a disciple of an evil cultivator who lived deep in the mountains. Because he was the only disciple in the sect, it wasn't easy for him to cultivate, let alone teach a disciple. Thus, he was worried that after he reincarnated, no one would come to guide him. Thus, he had the idea of seeking protection from a sect. When Song Chuyuan found him, he felt that Zhang Yan was a suitable person for him to rely on. First, Hanyuan sect wasn't like the 5 main sections. If he, a first-layer Yuanying cultivator, took the initiative to join them, they would most likely take him seriously. Second, he observed the actions of this sect master. He was quite capable and wasn't a mediocre person. This kind of person was enough to make a sect prosper. If he boarded this boat that traveled with the wind, even if it didn't work out, he could still use it to change his luck. After a while, Jingyu came out of the cave again. He bowed and said, "Is it Taoist Tang? Master invites you inside to meet him." The lame Taoist was instructed by Song Chuyuan not to look down on him just because he was a Taoist child. He said with a smile, "Thank you." Jingyu smiled and said, "When Taoist Tang meets master, remember not to exaggerate. If you have anything to say, just say it as it is." The lame Taoist looked at him deeply. He raised his hand and bowed. Jingyu said, "Follow me." After the lame Taoist followed Jingyu into the cave, they walked towards a small path on the right. After walking on the flat stone floor for dozens of steps, they saw a jade staircase going up. After walking for 100 steps, they entered a stone residence that was 30 feet square. The walls were inlaid with pearls, filling the room with light. On the stone platform sat a handsome and dignified young Taoist. His eyes were like cold pools, deep and unfathomable. Song Chuyuan stood at the side with a respectful expression. Song Chuyuan saw him and bowed to the seated Taoist, saying, "Taoist master, this is Taoist Tang Jin." Zhang Yan looked over, nodded, and said with a smile, "Taoist Tang, I heard from Taoist Song that you used a cultivator to trick Wei Shuling and the others. Did they suspect you at that time?" The lame Taoist knew that he had to explain clearly, so he went forward and bowed, replying respectfully, "Taoist Zhang, that person's real name is Zhou Xiao, he was originally Elder Zhong Tai. But by chance, I was able to capture him and use a secret technique to steal his mind. Usually, I use him to secretly obtain some cultivation items in the Celestial City. Among Wei Shuling's group, someone must have recognized his identity, so I was able to trick him." Zhang Yan nodded slightly, accepting this explanation. He then asked, "Since this person is still alive, then where is he now?" The lame Taoist said seriously, "Without reporting to Taoist master, how would I dare to bring him here? Before I came here, I ordered him to return to his hiding place. He had to be careful with this action. Zhou Xiao was, after all, Elder Zhong Tai, and he was involved in many things. If this matter was leaked, Zhong Tai would definitely come for revenge. He was a loner, so there was nothing to be afraid of. But he was not sure of Zhang Yan's attitude. If he rashly brought him here, it was possible that the other party would kill him on the spot and hand him over to Zhong Tai. He made up his mind that if the other party showed interest in this matter, then he would think of a way to leave this place." Zhang Yan seemed to see through his thoughts. He smiled and did not pursue the matter any further. He said, "I still have to thank fellow Taoist Tang for helping us this time. Jingyu, go find a good cave abode and settle the two of them down." The lame Taoist knew that they only met once, and the other party might not trust him. But when Wei Shuling arrived, there would be a chance to show off. After bowing, he left with Song Chuyuan. Taoist Nun Wei and the others flew over the sea, traveling in the morning and resting at night. On the way, they passed by the Celestial City where Zhong Tai was, but they all stayed far away. After traveling for more than 10 days, the Shinwu mountain was already in sight. Tsing Tsongluan said, "At most in 2 or 3 days, we can enter the mountain." Hearing this, everyone's spirits rose, and they all sped up. After traveling for another 2 hours, the sea suddenly became foggy, and the surroundings became a vast expanse of whiteness. Elder Xing was the first to notice that something was wrong. With their eyesight, they actually could not see through the fog. His expression became serious, and he said, "Everyone, be careful." At this moment, everyone's body stiffened, and it was difficult for them to move, as if they were shackled. The eyes of the disciples were all red, and they could not move at all. Taoist Nun Wei's face lost all color, and she cried out involuntarily, "Heaven and earth are trapped." Chapter 669. Apart from a few rare secret divine arts and treasures, only the third layer of Yuaniing cultivators would be able to use the art of trapping heaven and earth without leaving a trace. Facing an attack on the Beima Ocean realm, the group could only think of the Python tribe. Literature bar. After the initial panic, Taoist Nun Wei calmed her mind and took out a silver pill from her sachet. With a flick of her finger, the silver pill flew up to the sky with a "shio" sound and exploded in the air. It transformed into a ray of silver light that scattered down like a warm rain or a warm breeze. Just in time, it enveloped the 100 or so people. Everyone immediately felt their bodies relax a little. If they rashly ran outside the protection of the silver light, they would definitely be defeated one by one. Thus, no one dared to rush in recklessly, and they all came forward to thank Taoist Nun Wei. Elder Xing took a strand of qi and identified it. With a serious expression, he said, "The demonic aura is dense, this is undoubtedly the work of a cultivator from the Python tribe. However, they have no enmity with us in the past, so why would they do this? Could it be that they got the wrong person?" Tsing Tsongluan gritted his teeth and said, "Elder Xing, why are you looking into this? Those evildoers are not free from their beastly nature. Now that they have trapped us, even if they are not enemies, they are still enemies. Elder Xing looked at Taoist Nun Wei and saw that she was using her treasure. He asked, Taoist Nun Wei, how long can this treasure protect us? Taoist Nun Wei said, this star net is an important treasure of my sect. It was personally refined by the patriarch. With my mana, it can protect us for about 4 hours. Elder Xing pondered for a while and said, 4 hours is not long, but it is not short either. It is not good to stay here for long. We need to think of a way to break out as soon as possible. At this moment, a strong cultivator with a mustache came over and said loudly, everyone, there is no need to worry. There are more than 10 fellow Yuanying cultivators here. So what if they are facing a third layer of Yuanying cultivator? As long as everyone here works together, we can kill our way out. I don't believe that they can really stop us. Elder Xing shook his head and said, that is not appropriate. Who knows how many people the Python tribe has mobilized? Even if they can't restrain us, none of their disciples will be able to leave. The cultivator was speechless. Sing Tsongluan pinched his beard and pondered. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, and he turned to look at a black-clothed, red-haired, and skinny Taoist who was like firewood. He cupped his hands and said, I heard that fellow Taoist Ma's sect is proficient in the art of breaking. I wonder if you have a wonderful method. Everyone looked towards this Taoist. The heavenly cloud above this person's head was 2 real and 1 fake. He was actually about to step into the second stage. In this place, his cultivation was considered profound. He thought for a moment, then cupped his fists and said, the heaven and earth trapping technique is no small matter. If this person's cultivation is not pure, he will not be able to escape. Perhaps there is a slim chance of survival. I can only try my best. If I fail, I hope that everyone will not blame me. After saying that, he raised his sleeve and took out a black iron astrolabe. Then, he went to the edge of the silver radiance and stood still. From time to time, he would change directions and release streaks of spiritual light while muttering something. A moment later, the burly cultivator saw that he was still unhurriedly spinning the astrolabe. Unable to restrain himself, he went forward and asked, Brother Ma, how is it? Taoist Ma seemed to be annoyed that he disturbed him and frowned. He snorted and turned his head away. That cultivator couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Even though he was angry and embarrassed, he knew that they were in a dangerous situation, so he could only endure it. After another moment, Taoist Ma put down the astrolabe and sighed, this place is not good. That person's cultivation is too profound, and his mana is also flawless. Other than this person, there is also a formation surrounding this place. Please forgive me for not being able to do anything. A formation? Everyone turned pale with fright. It was already difficult to withstand the heaven and earth trapping technique. Now that there was a formation outside, how could they escape? Taoist Nun Wei suddenly felt something. She glanced around and saw that the fog outside had already retreated. Countless lightning flashed and fire hailstones flew out from nothingness, crashing towards where everyone was standing. The silvery light that was like a layer of gauze rumbled and floated around, as if it couldn't withstand it. Her expression changed slightly, and she hurriedly cast a few more spells on it to barely withstand it. She said with some difficulty, Taoist Ma is right. There is still a formation attacking from outside. At most, it will take another 2 hours to break through this treasure. Everyone's expressions turned incomparably ugly when they heard those words. Elder Xing smiled bitterly and said, Are we going to die here today? He turned back to look at the disciples behind him and couldn't help but sigh. Sing Tsongluan's expression kept changing, as if he was thinking about something difficult. After a while, he suddenly raised his head and said, Everyone, I have a method that might be worth a try, but... At this point, he suddenly stopped talking. Everyone looked over, and Elder Xing asked cautiously, Does Taoist Sing have any difficulties? Sing Tsongluan looked around and said, If I use this technique, I will have bad luck on me. Therefore, I need everyone to make a solemn vow that if I suffer a calamity in the future, the people here will definitely come and save me. Elder Xing seemed to have thought of something and said excitedly, Could it be that Taoist Lu Gongnan's fortune observation book is in Taoist Tsing's hands? Tsing Tsongluan knew that he couldn't hide it, so he simply admitted, yes. The eyes of the surrounding people couldn't help but shine, and there was even some greed in them. As everyone knew, even with a secret method, if one wanted to calculate a cultivator's path, fortune or misfortune, the price was extremely high. Even if one sacrificed their life, they might not be able to obtain the result. Therefore, unless there was no other choice, no one would do it. The fortune observation book was a rare treasure that could help cultivators seek fortune and avoid misfortune, and point out a path of survival in a dangerous situation. Back then, Tsing Tsongluan's senior brother Lu Quinan relied on this book to be treated as an honored guest by many sections. However, using this treasure didn't come without a price. Once one's fortune was gone, there would definitely be a calamity. Therefore, unless it was a matter of life and death, he wouldn't be willing to use this item. Elder Xing knew the profoundness of this, and after thinking for a while, he solemnly said, Xing Cheng, vow here that if Taoist Tsing helps us escape, I will definitely come and help you in the future. If I violate this vow, I will forever be immortal, never to be freed. Right now, getting out of here was the most important thing, and the matters in the future were comparatively trivial. Since someone had taken the lead, everyone else also followed suit and made the vow. Only then did Tsing Tsongluan feel relieved. He calmed himself down and took out a bamboo book. As soon as he opened it, he saw a white light rushing out, and within it, there were thousands of talismans flying around. He resisted the discomfort in his eyes and looked at it. In just a breath's time, he felt tears and snot flowing down his face, and his mind felt like it was being pricked by needles. He didn't dare to look at it any longer, and hurriedly put it away and let out a long breath. Elder Xing anxiously asked, How is it? Just now, has Taoist brother seen anything? Tsing Tsongluan said, My cultivation is shallow, and I can't see too many clues. I only know that there is a chance in the north, and someone can help us escape. Someone said unhappily, Isn't this the same as not saying anything? If we can get out, why would we need to be trapped here? At this moment, Taoist Nun Wei suddenly said, Not necessarily. I have a sect's talisman called the Star Attraction Incense, which was given to me by the founding master in the past. If a disciple is trapped in a dangerous place, he can light this incense and escape from here. Tsing Tsongluan couldn't help but be excited, and asked, I wonder if martial nephew can bring someone out? Taoist Nun Wei said, I'll have to disappoint everyone, but this method can only be used by people from my Shaotsang realm. Everyone instantly revealed a disappointed look. Elder Xing said, Since Taoist Tsing's star observation book is ahead, going out alone is also going out. Taoist Ma frowned and thought, Going to the north, is it going to Chu? Elder Xing thought about it and disagreed. He shook his head and said, The journey to Chu is long, and the round trip will take more than 10 days. It's not a good place to go, so the closest place is Shinwu Mountain. At this moment, Tsing Tsongluan clapped his hands and said loudly, That's right, the way out is definitely here. Even a cultivator of the third Yuanying realm can't easily trap 100 of us. As long as someone makes a move from the outside, that demon won't be able to do as he pleases. Martial nephew Wei, if you go to Shinwu Mountain and ask that Taoist Zhang to come forward, he might be able to save us. Taoist Nun Wei knitted her brows. She had originally come to look for Zhang Yan to ask for a disciple. She had come in a threatening manner, yet now she had to ask for his help. She couldn't help but feel very unwilling in her heart as she resisted. We parted on bad terms the last time, and I have already offended this person. Even if I go and ask for his help, how would he help? Tsing Tsongluan advised, Martial nephew, this matter is urgent. You should have the snake ring jewels and other items that you brought from Shaotsang realm. They are all things that Taoist Zhang needs. As long as you take them out, there's a high chance that he will help you. Taoist Nun Wei heard this and was even more displeased. She snorted coldly. Elder Xing winked at everyone present and said, Taoist Wei is doing this for the sake of everyone here. What you give up today, we will find a way to make up for in the future. We won't let Taoist Wei suffer any losses. Isn't that right, everyone? When everyone heard this, they all agreed. Taoist Nun Wei sneered, this trip to the Shinwu mountain will take at least half a day. Even if I ask this person to come, he won't be able to save you. When she said this, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. At this moment, Taoist Ma smiled and said, Taoist Wei, I have a horse with strong legs. It's called Buki horse. Its 4 hooves tread on smoke, and it can see mountains and rivers as flat ground. In a breath, it can travel 33 miles. It can help Taoist Wei to reach the Shinwu mountain faster. Taoist Nun Wei knew that she couldn't refuse anymore, so she could only agree resentfully. She fumbled for an incense stick and after lighting it, a curl of white smoke rose to the sky. Even though there were lightning and hurricanes, it couldn't be shaken in the slightest. Even the founder of Shaotsang realm had only given her 3 sticks of this item. In her generation, this was the only one. At this moment, Taoist Ma led the Buki horse over. Taoist Nun Wei flipped onto the saddle and pulled the reins. The person and the horse followed the white smoke straight up to the sky and disappeared in a flash. Lu Changsu was standing on the spell altar, waving the banner in his hand, ordering the demon soldiers everywhere to change the formations according to his orders. At this moment, he suddenly saw a ray of light actually barging out from the 6 returns earth pivot formation. Not only that, the trapping technique didn't even trap it, and it rushed into the green jade. He couldn't help but exclaim, what kind of magic treasure is this? How can it escape from this trapping technique? A light flashed on the main formation seat, and Mountain River Child walked out. He took a look and said, General Lu, don't worry. It was me who let her go. When Lu Changsu heard this, he calmed down. As long as he didn't make any mistakes, it was fine. Otherwise, if Zhang Yan blamed him, he wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Mountain River Child looked at the white smoke that hadn't completely dissipated and thought, even though this smoke is magical, it's not difficult for me to suppress it. If it wasn't because this Taoist nun has something that master needs, she wouldn't have been able to escape so easily. Chapter 670. Zhang Yan was cultivating in the cave when he suddenly felt his heart throbbing. He couldn't help but put on a listening expression. After a while, he smiled and called Jingyu over, saying, go and pass the order. If that Taoist priestess from last time comes, there is no need to block her at the door. Shua. Jingyu obeyed the order and retreated. After a while, he came back into the cave to report that Taoist priestess Wei has indeed come. She has been led to the main hall by this lowly one. Zhang Yan asked, did she say anything? Jingyu thought for a while and said, not really. It's just that the last time she came, this Taoist priestess was bossy and arrogant. She looked like she was unexcelled in the world, but now her expression is stiff and cold. She is silent and inarticulate, as if she is a different person. Zhang Yan suddenly understood and said, order someone to send some good tea. Jingyu probed, master does not want to see her. Zhang Yan smiled, I have to see her, but there is no need to be impatient. Jingyu immediately understood that this was Zhang Yan giving this Taoist priestess the cold shoulder. He chuckled and bowed, saying, this lowly one understands. Taoist priestess Wei waited in the hall for a while but still did not see Zhang Yan. She couldn't help but feel anxious. If Zhang Yan had said that he did not want to see her, it would have been straightforward. But he had invited her in and yet she did not come. She did not know whether to leave or stay. After waiting for a while, she really could not sit still and went to the door. She kissed a disciple on duty and asked, when is your sect head coming? The disciple on duty politely replied, Taoist priest need not be impatient. Just now, sect head has something to say. He will be here in a moment. Taoist nun Wei gloomily went back to sit down. After a while, she still didn't make any movements. Clenching her teeth, she went back to that disciple and said, go and report that I have something that your sect leader desires. Invite him here because I have an urgent matter. I really cannot delay. The disciple said, all right, I'll pass the message on behalf of Dao Zhang. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Taoist priestess Wei suspected that Zhang Yan would not come. At this moment, she heard a loud and clear laugh from outside. A Taoist wearing a black robe with an extraordinary bearing entered the hall. He cupped his hands towards her and said, "Taoist priest Wei, thank you for waiting so long. Last time we parted in a hurry and I didn't know you would return. What advice do you have for me?" This time Taoist nun Wei was under the low eaves, so she had no choice but to lower her head. Her body stiffly returned the greeting and said, "This time I came because a group of fellow Taoists were besieged when we were traveling to the sea. I hope that you can lend us a hand." Zhang Yan went to the main seat and sat down. He said, "Fellow Taoist, tell me slowly. What is going on?" Afraid that Zhang Yan wouldn't agree, Taoist priestess Wei didn't dare to tell him her original purpose of coming here. She only said that she went with the others to look for the immortal legacy of the predecessors, but she was cast by a demon cultivator and was trapped on the sea. She was the only one who escaped, so she came here to ask for help. Zhang Yan smiled faintly and didn't expose her. He said, "To be able to cast a trapping technique, it must be the doing of a giant demon on the sea. It must have been done by the giant demons on the sea. How could I have such abilities?" Taoist nun Wei said anxiously, "I heard that Taoist Zhang's Tao techniques and divine arts are all brilliant. You and I can join hands to restrain this demon from the outside. There's no need to make a move and we'll be able to save our fellow Taoists." Zhang Yan muttered to himself for a moment and then nodded, "Since that's the case, I'll follow fellow Taoist on this trip." Taoist nun Wei was stunned when she heard this. Her eyes widened and she said in disbelief, "Taoist Zhang is willing to go." Zhang Yan said with a smile, "Isn't this why Taoist Zhang came here? Saving people is like putting out a fire. Let's go to the sea and do our best. Let's set off now." Taoist nun Wei originally thought that Zhang Yan would refuse in every possible way. At the very least, he would use this matter to ruthlessly demand some benefits. She was already mentally prepared, but she didn't expect that he didn't even mention it. Things went smoothly beyond her imagination. She never liked to owe people favors, so she bit her lip and said, "Since I've asked fellow Taoist to help, I definitely won't let fellow Taoist come back empty-handed." Zhang Yan didn't seem to mind and only said, "Saving people is more important. We can talk about this matter later." Taoist nun Wei took a deep breath and nodded heavily. She stood up and said, "Then let's set off." Zhang Yan stretched out his hand and waved, "Wait. To be on the safe side, we should call another Taoist for this trip." Taoist nun Wei hesitated for a moment and said with difficulty, "When I came here, I borrowed the strength of a top-notch horse and rushed here in a quarter of an hour. It's fine for 2 people to ride on the same horse, but it can't carry 3 people." However, Zhang Yan smiled and said, "It's not a problem. I and that fellow Taoist are both experts in the art of escaping. Although it might not be as good as Taoist nun Wei's horse, it's still much faster than borrowing the imperial heavenly strong wind." Taoist nun Wei was skeptical, but since Zhang Yan said so, she could only choose to believe him. Zhang Yan informed the disciple on duty and the latter immediately left to carry out the order. Not long after, Zhang Boyan came into the hall and cupped his hands, saying, "Manor head, is there something you need me to do?" Zhang Yan didn't waste any time and said concisely, "There's a Taoist who's trapped on the sea. Follow me to the sea for a while." Zhang Boyan didn't ask any more questions and nodded in agreement. Taoist nun Wei saw that although he looked ferocious, his cultivation was also close to the second layer of yuanying. She couldn't help but feel slightly relieved. After all, one more person meant one more assurance. Zhang Yan walked out of the hall with the 2 of them. When he walked out of the door, he saw Song Chuyuan and the lame Taoist standing at the side. He couldn't help but look over and asked, "Fellow Taoists, is there something you need?" Song Chuyuan stepped forward and bowed, saying, "I didn't pass on an order and came here in private. I hope Sect Master will forgive me. Just now, we saw fellow Taoist Zhang being urgently summoned by the manor head, so the 2 of us discussed it. Perhaps it's something in the sect, so we also came to see if there's anything we need to do. After he finished speaking, his gaze shifted and he looked at Taoist Nun Wei. Zhang Yan said, I already understand the intentions of the two Taoists. This matter can be handled by me and Zhang Zhang. When I'm not here, the two of you must keep a close eye on the sect. The two of them hurriedly said, we will abide by your orders. Taoist Nun Wei was secretly shocked. Although she had invited more than 10 Yuanying cultivators in one go, it was only because of the Shaotsang realm. Many of them were friends with her Shixiang when he went out to travel. These people came from all over Dongsheng. If they weren't elders in the sect, they were masters of a region. If she didn't take the lead, they wouldn't have gathered here. However, there were already 4 Yuanying cultivators in this remote area of the Shenwu mountain. Compared to the people of the Shaotsang realm, they weren't inferior. After the 3 of them left the mountain gate, Taoist Nun Wei leaped onto Buqi's horse. She pulled the reins and soared into the sky. She looked behind her and saw Zhang Yan had already ridden a ray of sword light and tore through the sky towards her, whereas Zhang Boyan had transformed into a strand of surging yellow smoke that shot soundlessly into the sky, and in the blink of an eye, he was already on par with her. Looking at the way he was flying, he seemed to be faster than the horse. She couldn't help but be surprised. The 3 of them immediately escaped at an extraordinary speed. After a while, they arrived at the sea. Looking over, the sun was covered by haze and the sky was covered by thick fog. Everything was white. They could only hear the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. Taoist Nun Wei's face revealed a worried expression. When she came out, she was only concerned about the north and didn't notice anything. But looking at the scene before her, it was impossible to find the opponent. If she wasn't careful, she could fall into the enemy's trap again. It wasn't good to rush in recklessly. Just as she was hesitating, Zhang Yan said, it's hard to find an opponent. If we go in like this, we'll definitely fall into their trap. I have a lightning spell. It can dispel this spell. Taoist Nun Wei didn't dare to look down on him now. She hurriedly said, that's good. Sect head Zhang, please cast the spell. Zhang Yan stretched out his hand and took out a spell. The 3 clouds above shook and a purple gas rushed to the top of the clouds. At this moment, in the depths of the sea, the silver glow that was protecting everyone was becoming thinner. Taoist Nun Wei went and returned. It hadn't even been 2 hours, but old Xinglao and the others felt tormented. Those with bad tempers couldn't take it anymore. They said they wanted to rush out a few times. Some even suspected that Taoist Nun Wei might as well abandon them and not return. Luckily, old Xinglao had a good reputation. He managed to persuade those who were stupid to stop a few times. But his forehead was covered in sweat. He thought that if he didn't see anyone come to save him later, he could only take the risk. Just as he couldn't take it anymore, he heard a loud explosion outside. Thunder rumbled endlessly. The sea water under their feet shook. After a while, the thick smoke actually showed signs of dissipating. Sing Tsongluan reacted the fastest. He shouted excitedly, it must be Taoist Wei who found help. Fellow Taoists, follow me to charge out. At this moment, everyone noticed that the fog showed signs of dissipating. The invisible opponent seemed to have the intention to retreat. They also knew that there was help outside. Instantly, their courage rose. They each took out their talismans and rode their flying lights. They followed behind Sing Tsongluan and rushed out together. At first, there were bolts of lightning coming from the surroundings. But they weren't fierce. When they hit the talismans that protected them, they didn't seem to have much power. Everyone became even more excited. At this time, they gradually saw a sliver of light in front of them. Seeing that there was hope to escape, they couldn't help but shout and speed up their flying lights. After traveling for a short distance, they felt their bodies lighten. Looking around, they were already outside. Seeing that they got out so easily, someone said in disbelief, they got out just like that? Sing Tsongluan took a few breaths and said, maybe that person saw that things couldn't be done, so he retreated. Everyone nodded. This was the only explanation. However, even if it was a third-grade Yuanying cultivator, he wouldn't be able to do well under the attacks from both inside and outside. Both sides weren't mortal enemies. If he didn't have the confidence to win, it was reasonable for him to retreat. Elder Xing didn't have time to rejoice. He first looked around and saw 3 flying lights coming from afar. The person riding on one of them was obviously Taoist Nun Wei. He hurriedly went forward and saluted. Taoist Wei is indeed a trustworthy person. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid we would be in trouble. Taoist Nun Wei leaned to the side and made space. She pointed behind her and said, this is Sect Master Zhang of Deep Abyss Sect. This time, it's all thanks to Sect Master Zhang's help. Just now, it's also because of Sect Master Zhang's technique that we can break through the fog. Otherwise, it would really be difficult to find you. Elder Xing turned to look at Zhang Yan. He bowed and solemnly said, Sect Master Zhang, we've never met before, but you were willing to rush over to save us. This old man thanks you here. Zhang Yan stretched out his hand and said with a smile, Taoist friend, you're too polite. We're of the same path, so it's only natural. At this moment, everyone also came forward to express their thanks. This time, they originally came with the intention of pressuring Deep Abyss Sect. They didn't expect to be saved by this person, so they felt a little embarrassed and ashamed. Taoist Nun Wei hesitated for a moment. She took out a jade box from her sachet and handed it to Zhang Yan. Sect Master Zhang, I heard that you're looking for spiritual medicine. I happen to have quite a few here. This time, many of our fellow Taoists were saved by Sect Master Zhang. I can't thank you enough, so I'll give this to you. Zhang Yan didn't stand on ceremony. He smiled faintly and put the box away. He said, then I'll thank you, Taoist friend. Taoist Nun Wei saw that he didn't seem to take it seriously. She thought that he disliked her for giving too little and was afraid that she would be looked down upon. She raised her eyebrows and said, Sect Master Zhang, this isn't enough to repay you for saving us from danger. It's just that it's inconvenient today. I'll repay you in the future. Chapter 671. Since Taoist Priestess Wei and the others were saved by Zhang Yan, the trip was over. After thanking him, they all left. Literature Hall this time, they didn't dare to travel by sea. Instead, they used the godly house to return to the south. After leaving the mountain boundary, Taoist Priestess Wei looked back at the majestic mountains behind her and sighed. After today, she probably wouldn't have the face to mention the matter of asking for a disciple again. Sing Tsongluan knew what she was thinking and persuaded, Marshal Niece Wei, don't worry. In a few years, it will be the last Dragon Pillar meeting between Xianyu and Zhongtai sections. I heard that for this battle, both sects are recruiting cultivators from all over the world. At that time, all the cultivators in the world will gather. We might as well go and join in the fun. We won't have to worry about not having a good disciple. Taoist Priestess Wei was silent for a moment and said, all right. At the same time, Zhang Yan and Zhang Boyan also returned to the mountain gate. After entering the cave dwelling, Zhang Boyan said, Manor Head, actually it's easy to catch all of them. Why let them go? Zhang Yan couldn't help but smile and said, these people didn't have any enmity with me before. They were just bewitched to come here. With the Python clan spying on the outside, it's not good to make too many enemies. It's easy to kill them. Isn't it better to turn enemies into friends? Moreover, these people are all heroes of a region. We can use their mouths to let Zhongtai and Xianyu sects know that it's not easy to stay in the godly house. If it was just one person and one sword, he naturally didn't have to worry too much and didn't need to care too much. Just like Shen Baishuang in the past, he was extremely ruthless and didn't leave a way out. As for the registered disciples, he didn't care about them. If the situation was not good, he could immediately leave. However, Zhang Yan was different. He had the sect master's order to deal with the situation. The Deep Abyss sect still had to establish a foothold in Dongsheng. Other than that, he also had his own ideas. He couldn't be too violent and needed to pay attention to strategy. Zhang Boyan said, "Forgive me for speaking bluntly, but these two sects are busy fighting for the Dragon Pillars. If it's not an urgent matter, I'm afraid they won't pay attention." Manor Master, as long as the sect locking formation is set up, even if the Python clan invades, as long as the old demon Luomengzi doesn't show himself, there's nothing to fear. Zhang Yan chuckled. He said, "I am considering this matter. I came from another continent and don't have a deep foundation in the Dongxing continent. It is inevitable that there will be people who will make a fuss about it. Although I am not afraid, there is a lack of cultivation materials in the mountains." He had to rely on the outside world. Let's lay down a foreshadowing here first. There will be more to say in the future. Zhang Boyan said, "Most of the cultivators in the Dongxing continent rely on the celestial cities to cultivate, just like the branches and leaves attached to the trunk. The cultivation sects in this continent look like loose sand, but they are firmly controlled by the 5 major sections. When will the Shinwu mountain become a world of its own, and when will we not have to worry about so much?" Zhang Yan smiled. He said meaningfully, "It will be soon." 3 months later, with Xiao Yang's efforts, under the pressure and enticement of the Deep Abyss sect, all the sects in the Shinwu mountain had set up a restrictive formation and linked it with altars and formation flags. There were even many altars erected on the East Shinwu mountain. However, it was just the beginning. If they wanted to include the entire West Shinwu mountain in a tight formation, it would take more than 10 years of careful management. On this day, Chu Mulan came to the cave to report, saying, "When spiritual master Tang was supervising the Green Bridge sect to set up the altars yesterday, he saw a ray of light emerging from the ground and headed south. Because it was a Yuanying cultivator, spiritual master Tang couldn't catch up." Zhang Yan asked, "Did you find out who it was?" Chu Mulan said, "I asked, but all the disciples of the Green Bridge sect said they didn't know. However, Sect Master Bai happened to be there that day, and from what he said, it seemed to be Chu Changji." Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows and said, "This person has been hiding in the Shinwu mountain all this time. He's quite bold." Chu Mulan cupped his hands and said, "It's all thanks to the Manor Master's order to set up the restrictive formation, or else this person would still be hiding in the Shinwu mountain." Zhang Yan thought for a while and said, "If this person can hide in the mountain, it's not impossible for the Python tribe to do the same. They might even try to disturb us. You should be more careful when you go out these days." Chu Mulan immediately tensed up and said, "I'll remember." Beima Ocean Boundary, Penchang Island. The green-robed cultivator walked out of the pavilion and walked to the arched platform. He looked up and saw a majestic palace in the verdant green mountain opposite him. The roof tiles reflected the sky, and the palace was decorated with gold and silver. The palace was decorated with pearls, and the 16 floors were filled with pine trees, bamboo, and flowers. A stream flowed down the stairs. From afar, it looked like a palace of elixirs, embroidered with red clouds, and extremely luxurious. For more than 10 years, he had been traveling outside. It was only now that he returned to the island that he had the leisure to enjoy the beautiful scenery of the mountain. Although the tidal vortex had attacked a few months ago, the Python tribe had been prepared for it. In addition, Luomengzi had taken action to suppress it. Not only did the temple on the island, which had been repaired for 100 years, not suffer much damage, compared to the last time he left, it had been rebuilt quite a bit. An hour later, when he was about to return to the pavilion, he suddenly saw a stream of light flying from the opposite building towards him. A moment later, a beautiful woman with a slender waist landed. She bowed and said, "17th Master, the Patriarch wants to talk to you." The green-robed cultivator had been waiting for Luo Jiangyu to summon him for many days, so he didn't ask much and only said, "Lead the way." The two of them flew towards the palace and soon arrived at the main hall. The woman stepped to the side and signaled the green-robed cultivator to go inside. He slightly tidied up his clothes and stepped inside. Inside the hall, he saw the Patriarch Luo Jiangyu sitting in the main seat. Below him, other than the patriarch Luo Dongchuan, there were also a few white-haired and white-bearded elders resting with their eyes closed. Although Luo Jiangyu was the patriarch, he didn't put on any airs in front of the patriarch. He first asked him to sit down, then said, "A few days ago, after 17th brother reported to me, I felt that this matter was too big to be decided by one person. So I invited the several uncles here to brainstorm." At this time, one of the elders slowly stood up and said, "We are all old, we can take care of the trifling matters in the clan, but the patriarch can make decisions on external matters." Luo Jiangyu smiled and said, "Fifth uncle is too modest. Ever since I sat in this position, I have been trembling with fear every day, afraid that I will make mistakes. I was just about to ask the elders to correct me." The clan elder chuckled, cupped his fists, and sat back down. Luo Jiangyu looked at the green-robed cultivator and said, 17th brother, is that person really like what you said in the letter, that he is that Qinsang Zhang Yan?" The green-robed cultivator said, "I first heard about this from Han Wanka. Later, I was afraid that I would have to go on a business trip, so I sent someone to check. After comparing the appearance, there is no doubt that it is this person." Luo Jiangyu frowned and said, "Our clan wants to take over the Shinwu mountain, but with this person here, it will be a problem." Luo Dongchuan loudly said, "Right now, there is only Zhang Yan here, it is not the Qinsang school in front of us, what is there to be afraid of, elder brother?" Luo Jiangyu shook his head and said, "It is not that simple, this person's identity is special, we cannot touch him easily. In Dongxing continent, all the forces, big or small, are more or less connected to the 5 major sections. 100 years ago, the Python clan took over the northern Sea Jia because the Shinwu mountain was located in the north, the mountains and rivers were barren, Zhongtai and Xianyu both saw it as useless, and the two sects were constantly fighting over the dragon pillar. If the Python clan could find a way to control it, they would be able to occupy a place in Dongxing continent, and at that time, it would be even more difficult for the 5 sects to drive them out. But Zhang Yan became the master of the Shinwu mountain before them. If it was someone else, it would not be a big deal. For example, helping Xiao Zhongxiang was one of the top 10 disciples of the Qinsang school, but he was also one of the top 10 disciples of the Qinsang school, and a rare first-grade Dan cultivator. If he was in danger, the Python clan would not ignore him. This caused the Python clan to be a little cautious. Luo Jiangyu thought for a while, but could not come up with a good plan, so he said, 17th brother, what do you think? The green-robed cultivator already had a plan in mind, and calmly replied, Elder brother, since he is a disciple of the Qinsang school, we should not clash with him. Even if we can win, do you think we can kill him? If we do that, we will only attract more trouble. Luo Jiangyu nodded heavily. Luo Dongchuan unhappily said, are we just going to ignore him like that? The green-robed cultivator smiled and said, Elder brother misunderstood, that is not what I mean. Although we cannot directly appear, it does not mean that there is no one who can deal with this person. He looked at the clan elders and said, the matter of the Qinsang school can be handed over to the people of the Qinsang school to deal with. Luo Jiangyu was shocked, 17th brother, are you saying that we should ask that person to come and help? The green-robed cultivator nodded. Just now, the clan elder opened his mouth and said, there is only one Qinsang disciple, that person may not lower himself to come, how can you persuade him? The green-robed cultivator cupped his hands and said, if it was someone else, then it would be fine, but Zhang Yan once used the Dark North Sword to break the 4 divine beheading formation, so he has quite a bit of history with this person. If the news spreads, I don't believe that person will remain indifferent. The clan elder nodded, and did not say anything else. Luo Jiangyu also thought for a long time, and finally made up his mind, saying, 17th brother's words are reasonable, it is worth a try. I will write a letter and send it to the Central Pillar State. The green-robed cultivator hurriedly said, Elder brother, just a letter might not be able to persuade that person. To show my sincerity, I am willing to personally go to the Central Pillar State. Luo Jiangyu thought for a moment, then agreed, that's fine, 17th brother has always been astute, I can rest assured if you go. The green-robed cultivator said, there is one more thing, after ninth brother was captured, that person no longer has any Luo disciples under him. Although our two clans have an oath of alliance, in the long run, it is not appropriate. I think there is no harm in choosing a few more nephews to send to that person. Luo Dongchuan angrily said, my Python clan was willing to make an oath of alliance with that person, but that was only because we saw that he had a chance to seize the position of Qinsang clan leader. Now that Qin Mabai has already stabilized his position, and our clan has opened up a new world, why do we need to curry favor with that person? 11th brother was his disciple, but wasn't he still captured by Qinsang in the end? Luo Jiangyu ignored him, only asking, who does 17th brother like? The green-robed cultivator said, Luo Sun and Luo Yi are very smart, they can come with me. Luo Jiangyu immediately decided and said, then you can bring them along. Then he asked again. Then he asked, how long will it take to get a result? The green-robed cultivator considered, this round trip, even if it is fast, it will still take 4 to 5 years, but it is also possible that it will take longer. Luo Jiangyu nodded, saying, if it is not possible, you can send a letter earlier, I can make other plans. Chapter 672. Ever since Taoist Nun Wei left, there were no more disturbances in Mount Xinwu. Zhang Yan left all the matters of the sect to Chu Mu Ran and his two brothers while he sealed his cave abode and diligently practiced the 5 elements escape art. In the blink of an eye, 8 years had passed. There were still a few months left until the gathering of the dragon pillars. Zhang Yan felt that he had made some progress in the 5 elements escape technique. If he wanted to improve further, he couldn't do it in a hurry. Thus, he waved his sleeves and closed the forbidden door, stepping out of his cave residence. Jing Yu was on duty outside the door every day. When he sensed it, he quickly ran over and bowed, welcome back, master. Zhang Yan sat down on the jade couch and asked, Kai Wei, has Kating returned to the mountain? Jing Yu replied, not yet, but there is a letter. He took out a letter from his bosom and presented it with both hands. Zhang Yan took it, opened it, and scanned through it. He understood the situation within, and then he flicked his finger lightly to turn the letter into ash. After that, he said, go invite fellow Taoist Zhang over. After a short while, Zhang Boyan entered the cave abode and bowed in front of the seat. Zhang Yan returned the greeting and invited him to take a seat. He said, Zhang, I intend to leave for Chu in the next few days to attend the gathering of the dragon pillars. Come with me. Zhang Boyan already knew that Zhang Yan had such a plan, so he wasn't surprised. He chuckled and said, the 6th Prince of Chu has sent several letters to invite Manorhead to go. This time, his wish can be fulfilled. Zhang Yan nodded and said, the 6th Prince has sent quite a number of spiritual herbs. I owe him a favor. Why don't you write a letter to clarify this matter? Zhang Boyan said, that's easy. He leaned to the side and cupped his hands, I wish to bring my disciple Zhao Yang along this time. I wonder if the Manorhead will agree to this. Zhang Yan smiled and said, why not? The two of them discussed in detail for a while more before Zhang Boyan took his leave. In the following days, Zhang Yan took the time to deal with the mundane affairs that had accumulated over the years. After everything was settled, he prepared to set off. However, the strange thing was that there was still no reply from the 6th prince. Zhang Yan guessed that there might be some changes, but he didn't think much of it. Emperor Zhongtai's relatives were Zhongtai's disciples in name. However, this generation loved to enjoy pleasure and sensual pleasures. They couldn't stand the solitude of cultivation, and they didn't have the patience to meditate and comprehend the profound. Thus, they were only disciples in name. He did not have much interaction with the orthodox Taoist cultivators. Previously, for the sake of the spiritual herbs. Only then did he politely reply. Since there was no news, there was no need to bother about it. On the 10th day, he summoned Zhang Boyan and his disciple, Song Chuyuan, the lame Taoist, and the others. He turned into a streak of light and headed for Chu country. Because they weren't in a rush, the 4 of them didn't go up to the extreme sky to ride on the astral winds. After traveling for 10 days, they were still 1,000 miles away from Chu country's Dayang city. Chu country's capital city was Daeong, with tens of millions of residents. It was one of the few metropolises in Dongxing continent. The city was surrounded by 3 rivers and willows. The 5 of them looked down from the sky. Outside the city, there were vendors selling their wares. Carriages and horses came and went, and merchants shouted. In the east and south, there were 2 large ponds called the Pond of Benefit and the Pond of Virtue. In the water, there were 2 golden city dragon boats that protected the country. They were 6,000 feet long and covered with 12 floors of pavilions. On each floor, there were altars with jade tables and offering tables. Incense was burning in spirals and the air was like steam, forming into clouds. Although they could see the situation outside the city, there was a thin layer of fog covering the city. Even if they used their eyesight, they still couldn't see the situation inside. Song Chuyuan pointed there and said, "That is the heaven-locking restriction formation. If we fly over, we will definitely be stopped. We need to get the genealogy to pass." When Zhang Boyan came last time, he only went to the celestial city and didn't go to the human state city. He took a few glances and saw that the restriction was crude and couldn't be compared to Hanyuan Mountain Gates formation. With their cultivation, it wasn't impossible for them to break through. He couldn't help but sneer, "It's just a restriction formation, it can only stop ordinary people. It won't affect us." Zhang Yan said, "Zhongtai is the host and we are the guests. We don't need to rely on force." Taoist Song, how do we get the genealogy? Song Chuyuan bowed and replied, "Zhongtai sect has a Tao palace outside the state city. We can go there to get the genealogy." The lame Taoist swept his gaze around and pointed at a boundary. "That's it." Zhang Yan turned to look and saw that the direction he was pointing at was a mountain ridge that looked like a brush rack 100 miles away from the mountain ridge. There was a temple on top of it and smoke was rising from the roof tiles. The wind could not disperse it and the smoke rose straight into the sky. It was obvious that it was the work of a cultivator. There were more than 10 Maosei village at the foot of the mountain and there was a stream surrounding it. There was a very flat road at the entrance of the village and there was a small pond by the side. There was a huge rock that was half the height of a person. However, after taking a few more glances, he noticed that there were rays of spiritual light coming out from the rock. Zhang Yan felt that something was wrong and floated over there. After landing, he took a closer look and smiled at the people behind him. "Can the 3 Taoists see anything?" A ray of light shot out from Song Chuyuan's eyes and after a while, he said with certainty, "This rock is formed from an ancient tree that is billions of years old. There is a stone core inside and it will break out of its shell in at most 10 years. If it's lucky, it can use the human chi here to take the form of a human." The lame Taoist shook his head and said, "It's rare for a stone to turn into a spirit. It won't take more than 10 years, but I dare to say that it will meet its doom before it can break out of its shell." As soon as he said that, the rock seemed to move and let out a whimpering sound. There was also water that looked like tears flowing out from the cracks of the rock. The few of them didn't have any expression on their faces. They could tell that the spirit in the rock felt sad and self-pitying. Zhao Yang couldn't help but say, "Sect master, since we are passing by this place, we are fated. Why don't you help it?" Zhang Yan muttered to himself and took out a form transformation pill. He flicked his finger and sent it into Zhao Yang's hand. He said with a smile, "This pill can help it transform. However, if you help it, you will take on the karma of this stone spirit." Zhao Yang didn't care at all. He turned the pill into a wisp of clear air and used his mana to slap it into the rock. Zhang Boyan didn't say anything and let his disciple do what he wanted. After a while, the big rock suddenly shook and a crack appeared. A ray of light shot out from it and a girl in white with almond-shaped eyes and rosy cheeks walked out. She bowed to Zhao Yang and said timidly, "I'm Qiao Ying, thank you for enlightening me, Celestial Master. I'm willing to use this body to serve you and repay your kindness." Zhao Yang looked at her up and down and said with a smile, "Coincidentally, my master needs someone to serve him, so I'll choose you." Zhang Boyan snorted and said coldly, "I don't need anyone to serve me. Zhao Yang smiled and said, "Since master doesn't accept you, then you can only be my disciple." The girl in white said in fear, "I don't dare." She looked at Zhang Boyan with some fear and lowered her head to stand behind Zhao Yang, looking obedient. At this moment, a farmer happened to pass by and saw them surrounding the rock. He was stunned at first. After hesitating for a while, he came forward cautiously and said, "Immortal masters, are you interested in this rock?" Zhao Yang looked at him and said, "So what if I am? So what if I'm not?" The farmer shrunk his neck. He stammered, "No, nothing. It's just that the stone steps in front of the Taoist temple on the mountain are missing a corner. I ordered me to fix it. I remembered that there was an ownerless big rock at the entrance of the village, so I wanted to use it." The girl in white couldn't help but cover her mouth with her sleeves and let out a low cry of surprise. If Zhang Yan and the others came a step later, she would have suffered a disaster. Although she had already shed her shell, this rock was where she originally resided, so she couldn't give it up easily. Zhao Yang understood the reason behind it. Since he had already made his move, he was determined to be a good person to the end. He waved his hand and said, "I've already taken a liking to this rock, you can change to another one." The farmer didn't dare to compete with him and quickly said, "Since the immortal masters have taken a liking to it, just take it, just take it." He looked at them carefully and said fawningly, "Immortal masters, since you are passing by, would you like to have some tea in the village? The water is from the well in the Taoist temple. Other than the immortal masters who come here, no one in the village would drink it." Zhao Yang laughed and said, "Who are you trying to fool? The children in the village just pee and throw stones, how would we know?" The farmer was shocked and hurriedly knelt down. He said with a sad face, "Master Taoist, the well watchers usually take care of it. I'm telling the truth, I wouldn't dare to lie to you." Zhao Yang said it casually, but seeing that the farmer was trembling, he didn't want to mess with him anymore. He said, "I don't need you to bring any tea, just go to the Taoist temple and call the deacon here." The farmer quickly got up and left in a panic as if he was running for his life. After a while, a ray of light shone from the mountain and a middle-aged Taoist came down. He was wearing a bright Taoist robe and his hair and beard were meticulously combed. They were black and tidy. It was obvious that they were similar to the elders in the sect, especially the young Taoist among them. His breath was as deep as the ocean, which meant that he wasn't a simple person. He hurried over and said respectfully, "I'm Lu Xian, the General Affairs Officer of Alchemy Mountain Taoist Palace. May I know where you are from? What can I do for you?" Zhao Yang stepped forward and said, "I'm going to the Dragon Pillar Conclave with a few masters and passed by here. I'm here to ask for a pass certificate." The Taoist temple in Chu was built by Zhong Tai. Since this Taoist was also a disciple of his sect, he didn't avoid the topic and told them the reason for his visit. The Taoist became even more respectful upon hearing that. He said, "So it's the few of you who are rushing to the Dragon Pillar Dharma Assembly. There are a few large winged eagles that our sect has reared in our palace. If you ride on these spiritual birds, they can escort you into Daang City without the need of a genealogy certificate. It's just that taming them usually costs a lot." This, Zhang Yan smiled and waved his sleeve, tossing a jade bottle to the Taoist. The Taoist nimbly caught it, opened the bottle cap, and smelled it. He couldn't help but be overjoyed, and carefully put it away in his bosom. Then, he took out a bamboo whistle and blew it a few times. 5 black-winged eagles appeared in the distant sky, and after circling in a circle, they flapped their wings and landed in front of the 5 people. These eagles were as tall as a human. Their feathers were like ink and their beaks were like hooks. They looked majestic and extraordinary. Zhao Yang liked them and went up to grab them by the neck. The eagle didn't resist and lowered its head obediently. Zhao Yang flipped over and sat on it. Zhang Yan looked at the eagles and suddenly smiled. He pointed and the eagle in front of him turned into a wooden token and flew back into his sleeve. The Taoist was shocked when he saw this. Zhang Boyan, Song Chuyuan, and the lame Taoist all pointed with their fingers, and the large eagle in front of them also transformed into a wooden tablet. Zhao Yang was shocked and said, Sect Master, Master, this is, Zhang Yan smiled and said, this is just a small technique to activate the soul essence. This wooden token is the pass certificate. Zhao Yang, your cultivation isn't high enough. It's better for you to ride the eagles. As soon as he finished speaking, a streak of light appeared around him, and in a flash, he rose from the ground and streaked across the sky. The three nascent soul cultivators behind him also released streaks of light and followed after him. Chapter 673. With the credential, Zhang Yan and the rest flew across the sky without any obstructions and soon arrived at the sky above Dayang City. There was a ceremonial officer on duty at the watchtower in the city and he immediately sensed something and sent a red-robed deacon to the sky. After asking about the situation, he smiled and said, so you are rushing to the Dragon Pillar meeting. The sect has already prepared a funeral hall, please follow me. Zhang Yan and the rest had no objections and let him lead the way. The capital of Chu, Dayang, was backed by Hope Mountain, the gate of Zhongtai sect. There were 3,000 towers and 800 pavilions in the city. It was the hour of the evening and the afterglow of the setting sun shone brightly. Under the illumination of the colorful clouds, the eaves were bright and the palaces and lakes were sparkling. It was a magnificent sight. The deacon pointed to the peak and said, please look over there. This is our sect's treasure, the 5-elephant white incense tripod. Zhang Yan looked in the direction he pointed and saw a giant tripod on the top of the mountain. It looked like a pair of white elephants holding each other's back. Just now, because of the thick smoke, they could not see the inside of the city. But now, they could see it clearly. The ceremonial officer said proudly, with this tripod guarding the mountain gate, the sect's fortune will not decline. The lame Taoist said, Jinren, this is one of the 2 treasures left by the founders of Zhongtai and Xianyu sections. Zhongtai sect got this white tripod and Xianyu sect got the Triple Mountain Sun Tablet. The white tripod can protect the sect's fortune. The jade tablet is also known as the Heavenly Ceremonial Tablet. With this treasure, the weather within 10,000 miles will be favorable and the weather will be like spring. You can also summon the wind and rain and release thunder. Zhao Yang asked curiously, forget about the Triple Mountain Sun Tablet, can the 5-elephant white incense tripod really protect the sect's fortune? The lame Taoist smiled and said, it is not so easy to obtain the fortune of eternal prosperity. This tripod will kill hundreds of strange beasts every day during spring and autumn. One less beast means one less fortune. Zhao Yang could not help but take a few more glances and thought to himself, if only my father had this tripod in his sect. The Fuyang sect would not have declined either. Everyone followed the ceremonial officer for a while, only to discover that they were not heading towards the city, but towards a small mountain southeast of Caesar. Song Chuyuan said in surprise, isn't the funeral home in the city? The lame Taoist shook his head and said, those who came for the gathering of the dragon pillars have some cultivation. If I was the sect master of Zhongtai, I wouldn't dare to let these people stay in the city. It would be more reasonable to settle them outside the city. There were many temples and courtyards built on the mountain. They were arranged in a picturesque manner according to the terrain of the mountain. Many of the halls were already lit up with candles, and the entire mountain was filled with specks of light, as if the stars had gathered in the sky. When one got closer, one could even faintly hear the sound of drums and music. Other than that, there were still quite a number of spiritual lights, and 1 or 2 of them rushed to the sky. This was deliberately done by the Yuanying Jinren in the courtyard to show off his cultivation. The lame Taoist counted and found that there were more than 20 of them. The deacon arranged for the 5 of them to stay in a funeral home at the foot of the mountain. It was a quiet and elegant courtyard that occupied an area of 100 acres. There were more than 100 servants at his beck and call, and the pill furnace and weapon room were all available. There were also 30 to 40 female courtesans who were good at music and dance for their entertainment. Zhao Yang walked around and suddenly asked, I see that the temple on the mountain is even more unique and spacious than here. It's also much more spacious than this place. Why don't you bring us there to stay? The deacon bowed and said, please forgive us, the Jinren who lives halfway up the mountain has already arrived here a few months ago. As for those on the mountain peak, they are from the 3 sects in the south. All of them are famous cultivators, even I am not allowed to take a step in without any reason. Zhao Yang said unhappily, but when I looked at it, there are clearly quite a number of empty courtyards on the mountain. Why don't you bring us there? The deacon said, those have been arranged long ago. Zhang Yan didn't care much about where to stay, he was at ease even facing the cold moon and bluestone. He smiled and said, this place is fine. Only then did Zhao Yang stop talking. The deacon heaved a sigh of relief and said, if you have anything, please feel free to tell the steward in the courtyard. I will take my leave. After the person left, Zhang Yan and the other 3 went to meditate. After 2 hours, the steward outside suddenly came to report that the country's ceremonial officer had arrived. As a junior, Zhao Yang naturally had to deal with these trivial matters. He came to the hall and saw 4 people waiting there. The leader had a beautiful beard and wore a red robe with a green python belt around his waist. There were also some traces of qi cultivation on his body. At this moment, he was standing there with his hands behind his back, looking arrogant. When he saw Zhao Yang coming out, he asked, where did you come from? There was no need to hide this, Zhao Yang said, from the House of God. House of God Mountain. Where is that? The ceremonial officer frowned and took out a gift list from his sleeve and threw it over. Zhao Yang took it and glanced at it. There were many spiritual medicines and rare treasures written on the list, some of which he was familiar with, some of which he had never heard of. He couldn't help but be puzzled. What is the meaning of this? The ceremonial officer sneered and gestured to an attendant beside him, you say it and let him know. The attendant said arrogantly, listen carefully, in a month's time, the headmaster will hold a banquet for guests. When the time comes, if your master needs anything, you just say it according to this gift list. Zhao Yang was puzzled and said, this is not what we are asking for. The ceremonial officer sneered and said, you really don't understand, or are you pretending not to understand? When going into battle, you have to pay attention to the earlier and the later. However, this matter is arranged by our sect's elder one. If you ask for it according to this gift list, we will arrange a good time for you to go up. In this way, you can avoid danger and also get benefits, why not? However, we are not doing this for nothing. You will need to take 70% of the items in this gift list. The remaining 30% will be yours. This is already quite a lot, you should be content. He paused for a moment and then said, I will be in East Arrival Garden. If you have thought it through, come find me. As he finished speaking, he didn't wait for Zhao Yang to reply. With a wave of his hand, he turned around and left with his attendant. After going out, the attendant suddenly slapped the back of his head, as if remembering something, and said, Old master, I seem to have heard of that House of God Mountain somewhere before. The ceremonial officer sneered and said, which cultivator in the East Victory continent has a name that I, your old master, don't not know? As for those who are in cahoots with our Zhongtai sect's elders, I have already informed them. You see, these people are only staying at the foot of the mountain. You can tell that they don't have any background. If they are unwilling, report to Elder One and they will suffer. After the ceremonial officer left, Zhao Yang didn't get angry. He only felt that it was a little funny. He thought for a moment and decided not to disturb the teachers. He stuffed the gift list into their hands and went back to practice his daily homework. On the second day, Zhao Yang explained the matter. Zhang Boyan slightly narrowed his eyes. He took out a jade token and said, take this and make a trip to the sixth prince. No matter if there are any results, come back and report to me. Zhao Yang did as he was told. When it was noon, he turned around and said, Master, this disciple has found out that there was a rebellion in the Chu imperial palace last month. Several princes were implicated, and the sixth prince was also imprisoned for his crimes. In Daeang City, Lady Lian was sitting in the Dan room. She breathed out wisps of Dan Sha from her mouth and nose, mixing with the smoke in the room. After about half an hour, her cultivation reached perfection and she slowly collected her qi. Since the death of her two sworn brothers, she lost her biggest external support. Therefore, she lived in seclusion and rarely went out. She only worked hard to practice Xian Qi. She didn't expect that there would be a rebellion in the imperial palace. Several concubines and maids who she didn't get along with were executed. She, on the other hand, was able to avoid trouble because she cultivated in seclusion. Instead, she escaped a calamity. Recently, she even showed signs of breaking through. It could be said that she gained something from a disaster. She picked up a jade scroll in front of her and read it with rapt attention. She thought to herself, the technique second uncle sent is indeed mysterious. I've only practiced it for a few days and I've made great progress. If I become Yuanying, master will definitely look at me seriously and won't ignore me like before. However, there are a few spiritual medicines at the back of this technique that aren't easy to obtain. That's right, for this battle, master has almost emptied the treasury. Why don't we think of a solution there? While she was deep in thought, there was a light knock on the door from outside. A voice said, "Wife, Elder Yu is here. He says he has something important to discuss with you." Lian Nyangzi snorted. Ever since her two sworn brothers passed away, this Shinren Yu no longer visited. She didn't know why he was here today. However, this person was Yuanying Jinren after all and was once on good terms with her, so she couldn't offend him. Maybe the matter she was thinking about just now could fall on this person. After she made up her mind, she said, "Invite him to the hall for a while." After tidying herself up in front of the mirror, Lian Nyangzi wrapped herself in a large cloak and came to the main hall. However, when she got there, she discovered that other than Elder Yu, there was another person sitting there. This person had a scholarly appearance and a thin beard that reached his chest. He nodded and smiled at her. When Lian Nyangzi saw this person, she couldn't help but be shocked. She took a few steps back and said, "Chu Changji. Why are you here?" She tilted her head and looked at Elder Yu angrily. Chu Changji had long been expelled from the family by Hui Xian elder ancestor. She didn't expect him to appear here. If this got out, the matter could be big or small. Chu Changji said unhurriedly, "Lian Nyangzi, why are you so alarmed? If it wasn't for elder ancestors' favor, how could I be able to walk around the boundaries of Zhongtai?" Lian Nyangzi still didn't let down her guard and asked, "Is spiritual master Chu alright?" Chu Changji snorted and said, "Even the sect master allowed that heretical sect's demon cultivator to come to the tournament, why can't I come back?" Lian Nyangzi felt slightly relieved and carefully sat down on the main seat. She asked with a frown, "Elder Chu, what business do you have with this lowly one?" Chu Changji smiled deeply and said, "Nothing else. I just came to tell Lian Nyangzi that Daoist Zhang of Shinwu Mountain has arrived at Daeang City and is also here for the Dragon Pillar gathering." Lian Nyangzi said expressionlessly, "What does Daoist Zhang of Shinwu Mountain have to do with this lowly one?" At this moment, Elder Yu laughed and said, "Lian Nyangzi, Elder Chu came with sincerity. There's no need to hide it from him." Back then, that Daoist Zhang made Lian Nyangzi lose face. Don't Lian Nyangzi want to get back at him? Lian Nyangzi knew she couldn't hide it and glared fiercely at Elder Yu. After thinking for a while, she shook her head and said, "I'll have to disappoint Elder Chu. It's fine if this lowly one's two sworn brothers are here, but this lowly one is already a fallen phoenix. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do." Chu Changji smiled and said, "Don't worry, Lian Nyangzi. Since this person is here for the gathering, then there's something to be done. As long as we make some arrangements, there's no need for you or me to do anything. We can make sure he doesn't return." Chapter 674. After another 20 days, a dozen or so Yuanying Zenrens came to the residence in the garden. Because Zhang Yan's group had 4 Yuanying cultivators, they attracted a lot of attention. Since they lived next to each other, many people came to make friends with them. Literature Hall. One of them was called Qin Shogu. He had once met the lame Taoist from afar. He was humorous and liked to make friends with people of the same Tao. He often came to visit them, and gradually, he became familiar with the 4 of them. On this day, the lame Taoist and Qin Shogu were playing chess while Song Chuyuan watched from the side. Just as they were engrossed in the game, the the three of them sensed something and turned to look. They saw a ray of light flying over and landing in a courtyard at the foot of the mountain. Song Chuyuan took a look inside. Another person has come. I believe that on the day of the banquet, there should be no less than 30 or 40 people. When I travel, it's rare to even meet a nascent soul cultivator. I didn't expect to meet so many people of the same generation here today. Chen Shogu put down the chess piece and smiled. I've asked around these few days. These people are the masters of the small sects under the jurisdiction of the 3 southern sections. They aren't nameless people, and those who came before us have deep connections with Zhongtai. Together with those rogue cultivators, it's not surprising that there are so many people here. This Dragon Pillar assembly has affected the hearts of all the cultivators in the world. The lame Taoist pondered for a while and put down the chess piece. He raised his head and asked, I heard that the 8 Dragon Pillars are the 8 palaces left behind by an ancient deity. But I don't think it's that simple. Does Brother Chen know what they are fighting for? The Dragon Pillar had already been erected on the Dongxing continent tens of thousands of years ago, and the 2 sects had been fighting for this object for the past hundreds of years. Even after suffering heavy casualties, they were unwilling to give up. He vaguely felt that the matter inside was extremely unusual. Chen Shogu threw the chess piece in his hand and laughed. Cripple Tang, you didn't mention a word about this a few days ago. I thought you had changed. But you still couldn't hold it in and came to ask me. The lame Taoist smiled bitterly and sighed. Fellow Taoist Chen has to see me make a fool of myself. Chen Shogu said proudly, it would be difficult for you to ask someone else about this. It's just that I've heard some rumors. At this time, Song Chuyuan was also interested, revealing an attentive look. Chen Shogu's smile faded a little, and he cupped his hands towards the 2 of them, apologizing first. This little brother only heard about this matter from the grapevine. Just take it as an anecdote and don't take it seriously. The lame Taoist pretended to be angry and slammed the table. Don't keep me guessing, tell me quickly. Chen Shogu cupped his hands again and said, I have to talk about the Xianyue and Zhongtai sects first. These 2 sects originated from the same source. Before the founding ancestor ascended, he split his sect's orthodoxy into 2 and passed it down to 1 disciple each. Zhongtai passed down the compendium's secret record while Xianyu passed down the 3 Guanghui important technique. The cultivation techniques of the 2 sects had their own merits, but they were originally of the same lineage and could be said to be equally matched. But until now, none of them had the cultivation of that founding ancestor. Thus, both sects wanted to combine the 2 techniques, and for this reason, they fought endlessly. For these hundreds of years. Rumor has it that what that founding ancestor learned came from that Dragon Pillar. The lame Taoist said unhappily, you're talking about this. I've heard a little about it. Chen Shogu leisurely waved his hands. Don't be anxious, there's more. He looked outside and lowered his voice. I heard that both sects used up the opportunities of their predecessors. Zhongtai Zhenren Zheng and Xianyu Zhenren He's lifespans are also gradually declining. If no one has the opportunity to see the grotto heaven before reincarnation, they will be eaten by other sects like the 3 evil sections. If they retreat, they will die, but if they advance, they might have a way out. Thus, they had to risk their lives. When Song Yuanchu heard this, he was 80% convinced. Didn't the corpse cult fall like this? Thinking that Zhongtai and Xianyu would end up like this, he felt a surge of joy in his heart. The lame Taoist, however, did not believe it. Let's not talk about Xianyu. Zhongtai has the 5 symbols white incense cauldron to hold down the fate energy. How could there be such a mistake? Chen Shogu's tone was slightly sarcastic. Fate energy. If it's really useful, why would it end up like this? I think that something unforeseen must have happened. The lame Taoist and Song Yuanchu looked at each other, feeling that what he said made sense. Chen Shogu suddenly smiled and waved his sleeves. No matter what, it doesn't have much to do with us. Let's not talk about this. I've been here for a few days. Why didn't I see Sect Master Zhang? Song Yuanchu said vaguely, after the banquet, it will be the Dragon Pillar battle, so Sect Master Zhang has been cultivating in seclusion these few days. Chen Shogu smiled. We don't have any foundation, we're just going up for a walk to boost our reputation, there's no need to be so attentive. At this point, he suddenly shut up and looked at the two of them in surprise. Could it be that sect master Zhang did not agree to the ceremony officer's request? The lame Taoist did not speak, but Song Yuanchu snorted, what's wrong with not agreeing to such a rude request? Chen Shogu exclaimed, looking at the two of them with a complicated expression, then sighed, in the recent few battles, Zhong Tai has lost all of them, do you two know the reason? Regarding the internal situation of the battle, both sects were tight-lipped and kept it a secret, so outsiders could not know. The lame Taoist cupped his hands. Taoist Chen has a wide circle of friends, what can be hidden from others might not be hidden from you. Chen Shogu pointed at the lame Taoist and shook his head, Cripple Tang, you're belittling me again. Others might not know the background of a broken Taoist like me, but do you? He paused, stroked his beard, and said, the successive defeats of Zhong Tai were due to a person taught by Xian Yu. His name is Rong Juanzhong. He has cultivated for 600 years and has reached the third level of the nascent soul realm. Not to mention that he has cultivated the 3 Guanghui essentials to the point of perfection, he has also refined a magic weapon that he can use. He is the number 1 person in the sect below the heavenly abode. In the first 2 battles, he killed more than 10 cultivators of Zhong Tai. Even if he was surrounded by everyone, he was not afraid. Even sect leader Qiao of Zhong Tai couldn't do anything to him, so he thought of recruiting someone else. The lame Taoist frowned. The gathering of dragon pillars did not limit the number of people, it would only end with one side completely losing. The sect master of Zhong Tai had lost twice, the loss of the cultivators in the sect was too great, so he decided to recruit outsiders, but he would not allow outsiders to take advantage of them. Everyone who came here had to sign a contract, stating that they could not return if they did not win. If they did not meet a powerful person, their life would be in danger. Although he knew that Zhang Yan was not weak, his cultivation was after all only at the 2nd level of Yuanying. If he met Rong Juanzhong, he might not be a match for him. Chen Shogu saw that the two of them did not speak, so he kindly said, it is not easy for us to cultivate, you two should persuade Jinren Zhang. Although the rewards for this gathering of dragon pillars are generous, the danger is not small, why don't you just follow the order of the ceremonial officer, at least you can be at ease. After that, he stood up, cupped his hands at the two of them, and turned to leave. The hall fell into silence. Song Chuyuan was a little absent-minded, he did not know if Zhang Yan would send him to fight. If he met Rong Juanzhong, he knew that he would definitely die, so he thought for a while and said in a deep voice, it will be the Zhong Tai feast in a few days, we need to inform Jinren Zhang about this, so he can be prepared. The lame Taoist was calm, he looked over and asked seriously, Brother Song, if sect master Zhang goes up against Rong Juanzhong, what do you think his chances of winning are? Song Chuyuan thought for a while, then shook his head and said, it's hard to say, I still can't see through Jinren Zhang, but that Rong Juanzhong. This answer was ambiguous, but the lame Taoist seemed to be in deep thought. Song Chuyuan raised his head and said, Brother Tang always has ideas, do you have a plan to solve this problem? He asked casually, but he did not expect the lame Taoist to nod and say, it's not that I don't have a plan. Song Chuyuan's expression brightened, and he said with hope, tell me quickly. The lame Taoist said with a faint smile, I heard that Xian Yu sect wants to fight Zhong Tai and is also recruiting talents from all over. Why do we have to cling to Zhong Tai and not let go? Why don't we go to Xian Yu? Song Chuyuan couldn't help but stare blankly. Only after a long while did he react and say, but. He stammered for a long time, but couldn't say the reason. In the end, he choked out a sentence. How could Xian Yu cult tolerate us? The lame Taoist glanced at him and said, with the spell contract as proof, why not? We came here first because of the 6th prince's repeated expressions of goodwill. Now that he is in prison, we have nothing to do with him. Moreover, although Jinren Zhang is in charge of the divine house for Celestial City, he has nothing to do with Zhong Tai. Now that Xian Yu sect is powerful, it is more beneficial to go to him. Song Chuyuan thought about it and retorted, since Xian Yu sect is powerful, we won't even be the icing on the cake if we go. What's the use of going? The lame Taoist smiled and shook his head. If Zhong Tai only relies on the cultivators he recruited, he won't be able to win this battle. The people he invited are only used to wear down Xian Yu's strength. He should have a backup plan. If I'm not wrong, this battle will be even more desperate than the previous two, so there is no need to worry about not having a chance to go. Although Zhong Tai also recruited cultivators from other sects, they were not of the same mind. This battle involved the fight for the dragon pillar that had been going on for hundreds of years, so he must have his own plans. He would not put all his hopes on outsiders. Hearing this, Song Chuyuan was silent for a while, then said, Taoist brother's words are somewhat reasonable. Why don't we go and talk to Jinren? Before he finished, the lame Taoist quickly waved his hand and smiled. I just now little brother has joined the sect, so it is not convenient for me to talk. However, Taoist brother is fine. Song Chuyuan immediately stood up and nodded. Okay, I will go and report to Jinren now. He left the hall and hurried to the rear courtyard. There was a bamboo building here, which was where Zhang Yan was cultivating in seclusion. After sending a message from outside, he was summoned inside. After greeting Zhang Yan, he hurriedly reported the details of the situation. Zhang Yan's eyes flickered slightly when he heard this. Logically speaking, the lame Taoist's suggestion was indeed a good idea. However, why did he rush to the Dragon Pillar meeting? The three spiritual herbs, especially the snake jewel, he already knew that Zhong Tai's sect had a lot of them. Even if Xian Yu sect had them, they might not have as many. He thought to himself, ever since I came to Dongshin continent, I have not met a proper opponent. They are all far from the people I met during the 16 sect sword battles. Since this Rong Juanzhong is so powerful, being able to fight with him is exactly what I want. If I can win, then I will be able to ask for spiritual herbs as compensation. Chapter 675. 3 days later, on the second day of the second month, Hope Sound Mountain was filled with auspicious clouds and golden flowers. More than 1,000 female attendants in colorful clothes and ceremonial officers were waiting for the guests in front of the temple. The restriction that used to cover the mountain was long gone. In the misty mist, there stood a huge platform that was thousands of meters tall. It shone with a brilliant golden light. This platform was called the Golden Bell. It was the place where the founders of the sect gathered for a banquet. This was the origin of the name of the Golden Bell sect. Ever since the second-generation sect leader took charge of the sect, he dug a lake under the platform and called it the Nourishing Liquid Lake. It was very large, and in the middle of the lake stones were piled up into 3 high mountains. They were called the Welcoming Sun Mountain, the Joyous Carp Mountain, and the Auspicious Lake. The 3 mountains surrounded the Golden Bell platform in a state of worship, and were connected by jade bridges. This created the atmosphere of the Golden Bell platform. Golden Mountain moistens water, White Cauldron overlooking the mountains. Zhang Yan and his group of 5 arrived on a flying boat. When they looked down, they saw the green lake, the copper halls, the pavilions, and the water bridges. It was a beautiful scene. The lame Taoist looked down and sighed. Just by looking at this scene, who would have thought that Zhong Tai's sect has suffered a great loss and is no longer what it used to be? Song Chuyuan did not have a good impression of Zhong Tai's sect. He snorted and sneered, it's just the last radiance of a setting sun. A white light flashed below and a disciple of Zhong Tai's sect came up. He cupped his hands and said, may I ask where you are from? Zhao Yang took out the invitation from his bosom. The disciple looked at it and said respectfully, so it's sect master Zhang from the divine house. Please follow me. Those who came to the banquet and were qualified to sit in the Golden Bell platform were all Yuanying experts. Many of the lower disciples could only go to the 3 mountains to enjoy the banquet. However, this disciple saw that there was only Zhao Yang beside Zhang Yan and did not say anything. Most of the disciples of Zhong Tai's sect were relatives of the Chu emperor. They were very respectful. Even if they were to enter the pavilion, they would be seated according to their status. Between the 3 halls, separated by 36 jade steps, only those who were on good terms with the Zhong Tai sect and had outstanding strength were allowed to enter the upper hall. To Zhongtai, right now Zhang Yan's name was not well known, but because his cultivation base was profound and he was also the leader of a sect, 4 of the 5 were Yuanying cultivators, although they did not come from any famous mountain cave. The disciple didn't dare to invite him to the lower hall, so he invited him to sit in the middle hall. After taking his seat, Zhang Yan looked around and saw that the hall was extremely spacious, and his vision was unobstructed. It was a panoramic view. Sitting here, one could see the pear blossoms falling from the distant mountains, the fluttering jade rain, and the peach blossom forest. It was a scene that was too beautiful to behold. He shifted his gaze again. Looking at the banquet, he was the only one who had reached the second stage of Yuanying. In the upper hall. On the other hand, there were 2 or 3 people with similar cultivation to him, but none of them were at the 3rd level of Yuanying. In reality, in the Dongxing continent, other than the disciples of the big sects, there were only 2 or 3 people with similar cultivation. It was not easy to cultivate to the Yuanying realm. Many cultivators who entered this realm already had a long lifespan. If they went any higher, they would just increase their cultivation base a little. Without a huge opportunity, they would never be able to peek into the secrets of the heavenly grotto. They would only be able to enjoy the pleasures of life with a clear conscience, and no longer have the heart to advance. When his gaze passed by, the 2 people sitting near him also looked over. Seeing that his cultivation base was profound, their expressions couldn't help but change slightly. They hurriedly moved to the side and cupped their hands to greet him. Zhang Yan smiled and also raised his hands to greet him. At this moment, he suddenly thought of something and asked Song Yuanchu, who was sitting beside him, "Is there anyone from the same sect here?" Song Chuyuan took a few glances and said in a small voice, "There are 2, but they are enemies." He secretly pointed to a place and said, "It's those 2. Zhang Yan looked over and saw that 100 feet away from him, there were 2 strangely dressed Taoists sitting. One had a grizzled beard, red skin, delicate like a baby, and had an aura of transcendence. The other had a withered face, eyebrows drooping to his cheeks, a flat mouth, and a collapsed nose. His appearance was ugly. Song Chuyuan's voice carried a bit of hatred as he said, "The white-haired one is called Yang Fengshao, he was originally an elder in the sect. The one who looks slightly younger is called Gu Hongtang, he is from the same sect." When our sect was besieged by the 3 sects, these 2 didn't care about the sect's difficulties at all and escaped first. Later on, when our sect came to ask for help, they even turned hostile. My master was also plotted against by these 2. Zhang Yan nodded and said, "If Taoist can't find the person who passed down the secret tome in a short time, there's no need to be anxious." Back then, Song Chuyuan was willing to rely on Zhang Yan only because he wanted to be able to pass down the sect's secret technique to his fellow sect members one day and avoid losing his Tao tradition. However, at that time, he only made the agreement 16 years because he was extremely afraid that Zhang Yan would take his life. At this moment, he hesitated for a moment, then suddenly bowed and said, "If Taoist Zhang doesn't mind, this lowly one is willing to serve Taoist Zhang for the rest of his life." Zhang Yan wasn't surprised at all. He smiled and nodded. "Taoist Zhang's disposition is pure and good. Since you're willing to enter my sect, I can't ask for more." When Song Chuyuan heard these words, he only felt his heart lighten, as if the shackles that had been shackling him for many days had been removed. He solemnly bowed again and returned to his seat. Then, he picked up his wine cup and toasted, tilting his head back and drinking. Zhang Yan smiled and also picked up his wine cup, drinking a mouthful. When he put it down, he heard whispers coming from the seats next to him. His expression changed, and he channeled his energy to his ears. He heard someone say, "According to Chu's etiquette, a banquet with friends, a banquet with delicacies." This time, Zhongtai's sect master is hosting a banquet and not a banquet. It's enough to see that this is a test. Another person continued, "After the previous 2 dragon pillars, more than half of the elders in Zhongtai's sect died. At that time, there was a rumor that sect master Qiao wanted to invite an outsider to become an elder. If the rumor is true, later on at the banquet, us martial brothers will have to show off our skills." The first person shushed them and said in a low voice, "This is the territory of Zhongtai sect, who knows how many experts are watching us from the side. You and I should know this in our hearts. Don't mention it again, in case we offend someone for no reason and don't know it." The other person understood and hurriedly said, "Yes, I was careless." After that, the two of them talked about daily trifles. Zhang Yan shook his head and smiled, not in the mood to listen. After waiting for about an hour, the guests in the hall had all arrived. At this time, a bell suddenly rang. First, a pleasure boat came out, and out flew 100 or so female concubines. Colorful flower petals filled the sky. Then, a cloud of light came down from the sky, but it couldn't be seen from where it came from, as if it came from beyond the heavens. Another sound was heard, and the light dispersed. A black-haired Taoist walked out with a rui in his hand. When the disciples and elders of Zhongtai sect saw this, they all bowed and said, "Greetings to sect master Jinren." To show their respect, everyone also stood up from their seats and bowed. Sect master Qiao of Zhongtai sect had a pair of slender phoenix eyes, a prominent nose and red lips. His beard was long to his abdomen, and he had a dignified appearance. He wore a 10,000 purple star crown on his head, and wore a beautiful mountain and river robe. On top of his head, there were 3 big clouds that moved with spiritual light, and there was a sign of them becoming one. He laughed heartily and said, "I'm late. Sorry for the long wait, fellow Taoists." The guests below all said they didn't dare. Sect Master Qiao glanced at a ceremonial official in front of the hall. The latter stood up and was about to speak, but at this moment, suddenly, he heard someone say, "Sect Master Qiao, Daoren heard that you're recruiting people with special talents and doesn't care about their background, so I came to seek shelter. However, I, Daoren, am not satisfied with the arrangement of us 2 brothers in the lower hall." Zhang Yan turned around and saw that the person who spoke was Daoren with white hair and a youthful face. It was Song Chuyuan's fellow disciple, Yang Fengxiao. Sect Master Qiao had good self-restraint, and didn't get angry. He looked down and smiled, "It's not that I'm being rude. Everyone here is either highly skilled or famous, but I wonder what you're capable of." Yang Fengxiao turned around. He looked at the people around him and said loudly, "Daoren, I've cultivated a special art, and I want to hurt people when I attack. It's not good to use it in this banquet, but there's a decapitation, intestines washing, and heart gouging that can be used." The people below instantly went into an uproar. The bodies of cultivators couldn't be damaged at all. If they were damaged, forget about achieving the great Tao, even their cultivation would be damaged. Not to mention decapitation and heart gouging, even those cultivators of the strength path would die if their bodies were cut off if their cultivation wasn't profound enough. As for the head of the 6 sons, no one had ever heard of being able to survive after being decapitated. Sect Master Qiao, however, was interested and said, "Fellow Taoist, you're not joking?" Yang Fengxiao smiled proudly and said, "Sect Master Qiao, Daoren isn't someone who's lost his mind, he wouldn't dare to joke about something like this." Song Chuyuan's face was full of suspicion. He had never heard of such a special art in the sect, and even the books in the secret cave didn't have any records of it. He thought to himself, could it be that after not seeing him for more than 100 years, he's learned some secret art again? Zhang Yan's eyes flashed. One of the 12 divine arts in Qinsang school, Void Vital Qi, could achieve this, but he didn't know if this person also knew such a divine art. Sect Master Qiao looked left and right, then nodded and said, "Then please give it a try, fellow Taoist. If he really has such an ability, why can't I offer him a seat of honor?" Yang Fengxiao's eyes lit up, and he immediately loosened the silk sash around his waist before unbuttoning his robe, revealing his chest and abdomen. He touched his neck and patted his stomach, then shouted, "Who wants to come forward?" Song Chuyuan clenched his fists and was about to step forward to give it a try, but before he could stand up, he heard someone on the stairs say, "Can I?" Yang Fengxiao looked over and saw that the person had thick lips, thick eyebrows, and a thick mustache. He was abnormally tall and sturdy, looking extremely ferocious. He laughed loudly and said, "So it's Elder Xiang." I heard that before Elder Xiang entered the Dao, you were once a valiant general of Chu, your bravery was the best in the 3 armies. With a blade in your hand, you must be ruthless and merciless. Elder Kong didn't say anything more. He stretched out his hand and grabbed, taking out a thick blade from his sleeve. He walked down the stairs and in 2 or 3 steps he was in front of Yang Fengxiao. Without saying a word, he raised the blade in his hand and with a pu-chi sound, Yang Fengxiao's head fell to the ground. Everyone was watching with their eyes wide open. Seeing this scene, they all felt a chill down their necks. But the strange thing was, although the head was gone, the body didn't fall, and no blood spurted out from the wound. At this moment, a loud laugh came from somewhere in the hall. Everyone looked towards the source of the sound and were shocked. It was Yang Fengxiao's head. The head was originally facing the ground, but at this moment, it turned around and said loudly, "Everyone, Daoren, I will temporarily keep this head here. There's no need to hurry to put it back. Elder Kong, please cut open my stomach." Sect leader Qiao laughed and said, "There's no need. Fellow Daoists' miraculous art alone has already opened our eyes. Men, go up the hall and give him a seat." Elder Kong was very close, and he could see that this wasn't some kind of illusion art, but a real head being chopped off. He couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. Yang Fengxiao shouted, "Sect leader Qiao, Daoren is coming up now. I'm afraid there are fellow Taoists who won't accept it. Please allow me to finish displaying my skills." As he said this, the headless body trembled and took out a blade from somewhere. He fiercely slashed at his abdomen, and then put his hand inside to feel around, taking out a warm heart. He held it up with one hand and gestured to everyone before putting it back in. With a wipe of his hand, the wound had already disappeared completely. The headless body left the table and walked 2 steps unsteadily. He bent down and grabbed the head, pressing it back on his neck again. He first straightened it, then used his hand to pinch it. The cut was gone, and when he twisted his neck, he actually looked fine. Chapter 676. The lame Taoist was curious when he saw the method of cutting open the abdomen and carving out the heart. He looked at Song Chuyuan and asked, "Fellow Taoist Song, is this the corpse cult's secret technique?" Song Yuanchu was also confused and shook his head. Yang Fengxiao doesn't have this ability. The corpse cult doesn't have this kind of technique. Zhang Boyan scoffed. He's a cultivator of the Qi path. There must be a limit to what he can do. I don't believe that he can use it in a fight, so there's no need to pay too much attention to it. When Tang and Song heard this, they both nodded in agreement. This evaluation could be said to have hit the nail on the head. Only cultivators who specialized in strength could have an unbreakable body. For Yang Fengxiao to be able to do this, he could only have used some extraordinary methods. After Yang Fengxiao sat in the upper hall, he looked left and right, extremely pleased with himself. At this moment, he rolled his eyes and pointed to the bottom of the stairs and said, "Sect leader Qiao, my junior martial brother Gu's ability is also not bad, he is also qualified to sit here." The moment he said this, the elders of Zhongtai were displeased. Although Yang Fengxiao wasn't famous back then, there were still people who recognized him and knew his background. In their eyes, he was just a remnant of the evil faction. It was already an honor for the sect leader to be on the same level as them, but he actually wanted another cultivator of the evil faction to sit on the same level. He was asking for a foot after being given an inch. Sect leader Qiao was still smiling. "What ability does fellow Taoist Gu have? Can we have a look?" Yang Fengxiao chuckled and walked to the front of the stairs. He shouted down, "Junior brother, tell us about your ability." Gu Hongtang stood up with a proud expression. He said, "Sect leader Qiao, I have a small technique that can revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones." His words were shocking. Just now, when Yang Fengxiao spoke, some people might have been moved, but now everyone was in disbelief. Mortals. Once their vitality was exhausted, their souls would dissipate in a few days if there was no special reason. As for their bodies, there was no need to mention it. Even an ascended expert might not be able to do what he said. Sect leader Qiao could tell that Gu Hongtang was deliberately trying to shock them, but it didn't contradict his original intention. Zhong Tai was defeated twice, and many cultivators died in battle. Currently, there were very few people suppressing the various immortal cities. He had already sent out all the elders of Hope Voice Mountain, causing the mountain gate to be empty. This situation would definitely not last long, hence, this banquet. He also had the intention of selecting suitable talents. Those who had strange skills but were not good at fighting were exactly the kind of people he wanted to recruit. Gu Hongtang saw the doubt in the crowd and said, "If you don't believe me, I can give it a try." Someone below said, "Where can we find a dead man for you here?" Before Gu Hongtang could say anything, a man with a green scarf wrapped around his head stood up from the seats in the upper hall. A cultivator with a treasured sword at his waist said, "What's so difficult about this? I'll do it. Just find him." He looked down at Gu Hongtang's face and said lightly, "I just don't know if fellow cultivator Gu is willing." Gu Hongtang cupped his hands and said, "So it's Elder Zhong Tai Bai. Elder, you are a person of virtue and prestige. I'm sure there won't be any gossip after this, I'm willing." Elder Bai Daoren agreed. He pinched his fingers and made a hand sign, then he sent out a ray of spiritual light. After a while, a ray of red light flew in from outside the Golden Bell platform. It flew straight into the hall and stopped on the table. Elder Bai waved his sleeve and the red light dispersed. A 7 or 8-year-old child with a ponytail appeared. His eyes were tightly shut, his face was pale, and he had no breath. It was obvious that he had been dead for many days. According to Gu Hongtang's words, he should have found a skeleton. However, today was the Xian banquet, finding bones or a bloody corpse would spoil the mood. Hence, he found a child's corpse that just now had died not long ago in Deyang City. Gu Hongtang glanced at it and was certain in his heart. He dared to say such big words because he was prepared. If the other party found a skeleton, he would use a camouflage technique that he had learned to make sure that no one here would be able to see through it. If it was a corpse, he had thousands of specially refined human souls in his sleeves. From the old to the young, from the male to the female, they had all kinds of personalities. That would make it even more convenient. Right now, he could just go up and perform the technique. However, before he came out, Yang Fengshao had specifically told him that if it was too easy, then it wouldn't be worth it, and it wouldn't be easy to win people's trust. Hence, he had to act mysterious first. Therefore, he first apologized and slowly took out a few instruments. He laid them out on the table, then chanted incantations and burned incense. After a while, when everyone was getting impatient, he walked up and slapped the child's forehead, saying, "Wake up." The child's body trembled. After a while, he slowly opened his eyes, revealing a blank look. He then sat up, rubbed his eyes, and looked around curiously with a pair of black eyes. He was a mortal, so he could only see a hazy scene on the Golden Bell platform. He couldn't see more than 100 feet away, so he got bored after a while. Suddenly, he saw that there were many fruits and vegetables on the table next to him, and he felt hungry. He swallowed his saliva, grabbed them, and held them in his 2 small hands, eating happily. Gu Hongtang smiled and said, "It's done." Elder Bai's eyes flashed, and he shouted, "Wait." He retracted his spiritual vigor and walked to the child's side. He tried to speak gently, and asked, "Child, why are you eating and drinking here? Let me ask you, what's your name, and what's your parents' names?" As he said this, he glanced at Gu Hongtang with a sharp gaze. He was the one who found the child, so he naturally knew where he came from. After asking, if it was wrong, it could prove that it was the soul returning technique of borrowing a corpse. It was a fake, and not a real resurrection. Even without the permission of the headmaster, he could still chase the child out. However, Gu Hongtang chuckled and brought a wine pot over. He poured himself a cup of wine, tilted his head back, and drank it down without the slightest hint of panic. The child was obviously not from an ordinary family. When he heard an elder's question, he quickly put down the food in his hand, and replied with a childish voice, "Uncle, my surname is An, my father is in Jingji, and my mother is in Lin. I don't know why I'm here." Elder Bai was startled, and he frowned, and thought, strange, this actually matches. Could it be that this person really has a supernatural power that can reverse life and death? He then asked a few more questions, and they were exactly the same as what he knew. It was obvious that it was the original spirit. Gu Hongtang said proudly, "Elder Bai, what do you think? Does my technique impress you?" Elder Bai looked at him deeply, and slowly nodded, "You are indeed very capable." He still did not believe that the child could really resurrect the soul, but to be able to make him unable to find any flaws in it, it must be an impressive technique. Not only did he not believe it, but there were not many people present who were easy to fool. They all whispered to each other, trying to guess the secret behind it. Headmaster Chiao smiled, "Fellow Gu, you can come up and take a seat." Gu Hongtang's face lit up, and he bowed, then went up to the stage. After bowing again, he sat down excitedly. With Yang Fengxiao and Gu Hongtang as precedents, many of the cultivators in the hall were also tempted, and wanted to show off their skills. At this moment, everyone suddenly felt something, and looked up, only to see a fiery meteor dragging a long tail. It was flying over from the sky, and it was extremely bright, and it was flying towards them. The elders on the stage saw this light. They all had different expressions, some were stupefied, some were happy, and some were frowning. Moments later, this fiery meteor flew close, but it did not retract its momentum. With a rumble, it heavily smashed onto the golden stage, causing the entire stage to tremble. After a short while, the fire dissipated, and a tall and strong young cultivator appeared. This person's face was like powder, and he wore a crown on his head. His back was wide, and he walked with a majestic gait. As he looked around, he gave off a disdainful aura. A glint appeared in Zhang Yan's eyes. With one look, he could tell that although there were no clouds above this person's head, his body was firm, and his aura was vigorous. His breathing carried the sound of thunder, and it was obvious that he walked the path of strength. Moreover, his cultivation was extremely high, and it was comparable to the third grade of Qi Path Yuanying. He thought for a moment and asked, "Do you know who this is?" Song Chuyuan shook his head and said that he did not know. The lame Taoist also frowned and did not speak. On the stage, Headmaster Chiao was extremely happy to see this person, and he smiled, "Sun is late." The young cultivator cupped his fists and said, "I was sleepy and woke up late, please forgive me, father." Headmaster Chiao laughed and waved his sleeve, "It's fine, it's fine." The lame Taoist's mind flashed, and he said softly, "I remember now, this person's name is Du Shixuan, and he is Headmaster Chiao's stepson. I heard that he was sent to another sect to cultivate since he was young, and I didn't expect him to come back now." Du Shixuan looked at everyone present, and he pointed at Yang Fengxiao and Gu Hongtang, saying, "Father, where did these two come from?" As a stepson, it was very rude to ask directly. However, Headmaster Chiao did not mind, and he told him about their origins. When Du Shixuan heard that, he sneered, "Decapitate the head, torture the heart, and revive from the dead." He cupped his fists at Headmaster Chiao, and said, "Since you have such abilities, father, can you allow me to try?" Headmaster Chiao seemed to dote on him, and he immediately nodded and said, "Go ahead and try." Du Shixuan walked in front of Yang Fengxiao, and for some reason, he stared at him. The latter felt a sense of fear, but he forced himself to calm down and said, "How does young headmaster want to try?" A sneer appeared on Du Shixuan's face, and he said, "I want to borrow your head." After saying that, he reached out and grabbed Yang Fengxiao's head, and he squeezed it hard. With a crack, the head exploded, and he gently lifted Yang Fengxiao's body up. His other hand climbed up, and he grabbed Yang Fengxiao's ankle. With a split of his arms, he tore Yang Fengxiao's body into two. Just now, when Yang Fengxiao was casting his spell, there was no blood at all, but now, blood was spurting out like a fountain, and there was no more movement. Du Shixuan laughed coldly, and threw the broken body on the ground, and he said in disdain, "It's just a small trick of hiding a corpse in a corpse, hiding a worm in a brain. How can you trick me?" He was taught by a strange person, and his eyes were refined, and he could see the reality of spiritual vigor. With one look, he could see that Yang Fengxiao was hiding his spirit in the body of a worm, and then living in the brain. His body had long been refined into a corpse tool, and just now, he could do that. Now that his head was crushed by him, his life was gone, and he could not be more dead. He turned around, and his eyes were bursting with divine light, and he stared at Gu Hongtang, and said, "Don't you have the life and death technique, flesh and bones technique? Come, bring him back to life for me to see." Gu Hongtang was afraid of this person's power, and he could only watch as his senior brother died a violent death, but he did not dare to stop it. Not only that, under the huge pressure, he was so scared that his whole body was trembling, and his lips were trembling, and he could not speak. Du Shixuan showed a hint of disdain, and he sneered, "You are not worthy to be my honored guest, get out." He kicked out, and it hit Gu Hongtang's chest. The strength of a cultivator of the path of strength was great, and Gu Hongtang's sternum was immediately crushed. He screamed, and his body flew up from the upper hall, and with a bang, he fell below the Golden Bell platform. He twitched a few times, and then stopped moving. Chapter 677. Du Shixuan killed 2 Yuanying cultivators on the spot. His actions were so overbearing that everyone's expression changed. A few people nearby were so shocked that they left the table. An elder immediately scolded, "Du Shixuan, today the sect leader is holding a banquet with fellow Taoists from all over the world. It's supposed to be a grand event. How could you spill blood on the hall? Dirty the golden platform?" Du Shixuan wasn't afraid of the scolding at all. Instead, he laughed and said, "Just now, these 2 are talking about beheading and bringing the dead back to life. I was just giving it a try. They weren't good enough, so who can they blame?" Sect leader Qiao frowned slightly and said, "Sun He, you don't know how to hold back." Du Shixuan's expression was nonchalant as he said, "These 2 actually dared to deceive father and our fellow Taoists. I really can't stand it." A beautiful woman smiled charmingly and tried to smooth things over. Shixuan was just angry in the moment. "Sect leader, please don't blame him." Sect leader Qiao nodded and said, "I'll forgive you this once. Don't do it again." "Yes." Du Shixuan bowed and sat on the seat of honor on sect leader Qiao's left side. Seeing that sect leader Qiao had brushed off the matter so easily, the elder from before could only let it go. After returning to his seat, he angrily said to elder by beside him, "Sect leader has been too lenient and indulgent towards this child. Junior brother, take a look, does he still care about the elders of the sect?" Elder Bai didn't seem to be surprised and advised, "Sect leader still needs to rely on this kid to deal with Rong Juanzhong during the Dragon Pillar gathering in a few months. How can you punish him?" The elder snorted and said, "I don't believe that without this person, Zhongtai won't be able to defeat Xian Yu. There are so many cultivators here, and there must be a few that I can use. After the Dragon Pillar gathering, watch how I deal with him." Elder Bai shook his head. Someone like Rong Juanzhong wasn't someone that could be gotten rid of so easily. Moreover, in order to deal with Zhongtai, Xian Yu had also invited many experts to help him. It could be said that the outcome of this battle was uncertain. He sighed slightly and put these thoughts aside for the time being. Looking at the 2 corpses on the ground, he saw 2 primordial spirits sneaking out. He wanted to leave, but he didn't dare to. After pondering for a moment, he waved his hand and released 2 balls of spiritual light. He protected it for the time being and then said, "Do the 2 of them have anyone from the same sect or a son or nephew who brought the spirit back?" Yang Fengxiao and Gu Hongtang had brought a servant to serve them. However, this servant's cultivation level was low, and he was not one of their disciples. At this moment, when he saw the 2 of them being beaten to death in the hall, he was already scared out of his wits. Fearing that he would be implicated, how could he dare to open his mouth? Elder Bai asked around, but seeing that no one was responding, he said to the 2 spirits, "This spirit light of mine is a spirit light. It can protect you for 7 days. Hurry up and reincarnate. The karma involved in sending someone to be reincarnated was extremely great. It was not a master-disciple relationship. Or it might be people with deep connections like relatives and friends of the same sect who would rashly extend their hands. In the future, it might cause a lot of unnecessary trouble. He wasn't related to the two of them, so he naturally wasn't willing to accept it. Yang Fengxiao instantly panicked. Their senior and junior brothers had a lot of enemies, and just the prince alone was a few. It was fine here, but once they left the main hall, the outcome would be very bad. He steeled his heart and shouted at Song Chuyuan with a heart-wrenching voice, "Junior Martial Brother Song, Junior Martial Brother Song, you and I are from the same sect, could it be that you are willing to see our souls scatter?" Elder Bai was startled, and he couldn't help but turn around and ask, "This fellow cultivator is from the same sect as the two of them?" Song Chuyuan didn't think that the two of them still had the face to find him, and he was extremely furious. However, although they had fallen out long ago, it wasn't good for him to reveal the matters of the sect to others. He took in a deep breath and forcefully nodded his head with a stiff face. Elder Bai observed their expressions and immediately saw that they didn't seem to be on good terms with each other. However, this wasn't related to him. Right now, he only needed to get rid of these two troublesome people. With a wave of his sleeve, he sent the two origin spirits to Song Chuyuan's table. Song Chuyuan suppressed the disgust in his heart and ignored the two people's endless gratitude, putting them into his sleeves. At this moment, Du Shixuan suddenly stared at him. His gaze was like cold lightning, piercing Song Yuanchu's face until it hurt. He couldn't help but be shocked, and his hands slightly slowed down. In a hurry, Yang Fengxiao seemed to say something to him, but he didn't hear it clearly. Du Shixuan said to one of the elders next to him, "I saw that the two of them are from the corpse cult. Could that person also be a fish that escaped the net in the past?" That elder cast a disdainful glance and turned his head to the side, obviously unwilling to pay attention to him. Seeing him like this, Du Shixuan was instantly furious, and it seemed like he was about to explode. Elder Bai knew that Du Shixuan was easily angered, and his actions had always been unscrupulous. He was afraid of making the situation awkward, so he quickly stood up and smoothed things over. "This time, we invited the fellow Taoists of the world to fight against Xian Yu together. Sect Master Spiritual Master also said that as long as they are willing to be used by Zhongtai, it doesn't matter where they come from. Shixuan, why do you need to get to the bottom of this?" Du Shixuan said disdainfully, "What can these people do? Even those sitting in the hall are not much better, otherwise, why would we lose again and again?" These words cursed everyone at the same time. Whether it was the elders present or the people who came to the banquet, all of their faces were filled with anger. There was even a person who sneered a few times, threw away his wine cup, and flew away from the hall. Sect Master Qiao was also a little displeased, and he said in a deep voice, "Sun, don't speak without thinking." Du Shixuan smiled, and said, "Father, if you want to know who can come up to the stage, why do you need to go through so much trouble? Let me try, and we will know." After saying that, he activated his divine power, and his eyes shone brightly like fire. He looked at everyone in the hall one by one. When everyone met his gaze, their hearts skipped a beat, and they could not help but avoid him. However, when they passed by Song Yuanchu's table, they saw a young Taoist smiling slightly, and he actually looked at him calmly. The person's eyes were deep, like the deep waters of an abyss, and it was difficult to measure. Du Shixuan was shocked. Ever since he cultivated this divine power, it was the first time he saw someone who was not afraid of him. He could not help but stay on him for a while longer. He saw that the spiritual vigor of the person was majestic, and there were 3 clouds gathered above his head. He could not help but raise his eyebrows, and he called for a ceremonial officer, pointed, and said, "Who is that person? He obviously has the cultivation of the 2nd level of Yuanying, but why is he sitting in the middle hall?" The ceremonial officer took a look, then took out the genealogy certificate, and after a check, he knew the result. He bowed and said, "Reporting to Zhenrendu, that person's surname is Zhang, and he is the person in charge of the celestial city of Mount Shenwu." Because he is not famous, and he is not a cultivator of the lower sect of Mount Shenwu, we arranged for him to sit in the middle hall. Du Shixuan had never heard of the name of the celestial house, and he immediately despised him. He waved his hand and said, "So he is just a rogue cultivator, you may leave." He then cupped his fists at sect leader Qiao. "Father, most of these people can't even withstand the divine light in my eyes, how can they come up to the stage to sit?" Sect leader Qiao nodded and said, "I am right." Seeing this, Elder Bai sighed in his heart, and told the ceremonial officer, "Go and tell the musicians to play." The ceremonial officer obeyed, and not long after, the golden bell music was played in the hall. The tune was grand and melodious, and it went out of the hall, spiraling up the mountain, and echoing far and wide. However, because of Du Shixuan's interference, the atmosphere of the banquet was dull even though there was singing and dancing to liven things up. He left halfway, and in less than 2 hours, the banquet was over in a hurry. On the way back, the lame Taoist sighed and said, "Just now in the hall, I saw that apart from Elder Bai who has some cultivation, the rest of the people in the hall don't have high cultivation. As one of the 5 great sects of Dongsheng, the Zhongtai sect shouldn't have such a shallow foundation. I think the most powerful cultivators died in the previous 2 battles. No wonder they had no choice but to invite outside cultivators." Song Chuyuan sneered and said, "Du Shixuan's actions today have offended everyone who came." The lame Taoist thought about it and said, "I heard that sect leader Qiao was able to sit on the position of sect leader because his Tao companion, Madame Zhao, contributed a lot. I heard that this woman is quite capable, and this Du Shixuan is her son. Just now in the hall, I'm afraid he did it on purpose." Song Yuanchu was surprised and said, "Strange, why would he do that?" The lame Taoist shook his head and said, "Outsiders don't know about this." At this moment, Zhang Yan smiled and said, "We don't need to care about Zhongtai's own matters, we just need to wait for the Dragon Pillar Assembly in 3 months." The 2 of them hurriedly nodded. After Elder Bai left the hall, he said goodbye to a few of his good friends and was about to return to his cave dwelling to meditate when a middle-aged Taoist came over and said, "Elder Bai, please stay here for a moment." Elder Bai saw that this person's beard was fluttering in the wind and he had a sage-like demeanor. Although he didn't know him, he didn't dare to underestimate him and said, "This Taoist, why did you call me?" The Taoist bowed and said with a smile, "Sing Tsongluan, came from Fire Hole Mountain. I came here to help Zhongtai defeat that Xianyu, but because I don't have a sect to join, I came to recommend myself to Elder Bai." Elder Bai heard that his tone was not small, so he thought that he was someone like Yang or Gu, so he said with a mocking tone, "Since you have such ability, why didn't you mention it just now in the banquet?" Sing Tsongluan laughed and said, "Elder Bai, do you think that I am afraid of that Du Shixuan? No, I can't announce my methods in front of others, I can only say them in private." Elder Bai Daoran said, "May I know what method it is?" Sing Tsongluan took half a step forward and said in a low voice, "I don't have any other abilities, but I have a book of stargazing in my hand. I can help people seek good fortune and avoid calamity, and I can point out the right path." Book of stargazing? Elder Bai couldn't help but be moved and asked, "Is it the item that Lu Gongnan, Taoist Lu had?" Sing Tsongluan smiled proudly and said, "Yes, Lu Gongnan is my senior apprentice brother. After he reincarnated, he gave this item to me." Elder Bai's heart was immediately moved. The Book of Stargazing was a rare treasure in the world, it could point out a way out of a difficult situation. From the start of the Dragon Pillar competition until now, it was already a matter of the rise and fall of the 2 sections. If he could get the help of this item, it would undoubtedly increase his chances of winning. He thought about it and said, "Taoist Seng, I heard that this treasure has many disadvantages to its owner. What do you need? You can tell me." Sing Tsongluan was waiting for him to say this, he was happy and said, "I don't have any other requests. If I can control a celestial city under Zhongtai, it will be enough."